Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. That's right, we are back for another round of the Next Gen Racing Touring Car Championship for 2022. Of course, this being the inaugural season of the new series being brought to you by Next Gen Racing. And after the mid-season break, we are back for round number 6 of 10. And well, what better circuit to be at than, of course, the Knockhill Racing Circuit in Scotland, in County Fife. And well, whilst it has been a while since we last raced, all the way in the Netherlands, of course, the last time out, here's the case that our drivers have been enjoying their break, but also getting ready for another round of frantic racing. And we have an absolutely packed schedule as always for tonight, and plenty to talk about as we get ready to go racing once again. But let's take you through that schedule times in British summertime. That's BST or UTC +1. It is the case that in just under what is 19 minutes time, we'll be getting underway with our 15-minute qualifying session to, of course, determine our grid order for the purposes of race number 1. Race number 1, much like all of the races today, will be a sprint, and it will be the case that race number 1 will take place at 8:15 this evening. It will be a 20-minute race, no pit stops expected in that race, or indeed all of the races, and come the end of it, we'll take a brief pause before we get ready to go racing once again with race number 2 immediately after. Another 20-minute race anticipated to get underway at about 10 to 9 tonight, and then after that we'll take another brief pause before returning for the racing for one final time, as is the tradition with 3 sprint races in each round, and race number 3 here at Knockhill will take place approximately at 9 tonight, but of course those times approximate and may be subject to change. But as for the broadcast tonight, it is the case all of your racing action is being brought to you live, and it's being brought to you by 3 media platforms for your viewing pleasure. Firstly, if you are so inclined to go to Facebook, you can go to facebook.com/groups and look for the Next Gen Racing group there and tune in via the Next Gen Racing page. Alternatively, if you're more of a YouTube user, you can always go to youtube.com and search for Next Gen Racing and tune in via the official Next Gen Racing YouTube channel. Or last but not least, if you're more so Twitch inclined, you can always go to twitch.tv/TX141 and tune in on Twitch. And as for who TX141 is, well, that is I, your host and commentator. My name is Paul Walsh, also known as TX141 or Britain the Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And here's the case, I'll be bringing you all of your racing action tonight, indeed the remainder of the series, and I've been telling the story since the start of the series, and what a story it has been. And well, as our drivers continue to get ready, you see some of them in the background, we should give you a brief update on the championship standings and the season ahead. But before we do, we should just point out that it is the case that with tonight's racing, this is being hosted on the iRacing platform, the sim racing platform available only on PC, the premier sim racing platform. And indeed, if you haven't heard of iRacing, alternatively you're looking for a great sim racing platform to go racing on, particularly the touring car racing class car, then we can recommend iRacing beyond all others. But it is the case with a season ahead to go ahead beyond all others. We look to the calendar so far, and it is the case that after our opening 5 rounds, which of course wrapped up last time out at Zandvoort in the Netherlands on the 1st of September, our first 5 rounds were an eclectic mix of circuits following the British Touring Car Championship calendar for 2022. We started off on the 4th of August at Donington Park National, and we saw there the tempo being set with over 20 drivers taking to the circuit. It was fast, it was furious, there's plenty of battling, and of course, in that opening round, nobody was assigned to a class, so everybody was treated as an equal class, and really it was all about getting the maximum possible points up on offer by finishing at the front of the field. After that, we made our way to fellow British circuit, Brands Hatch Indy, the shorter of the 2 variants of Brands Hatch that we'll be visiting down in Kent. And here's the case on the 11th of August. We saw our drivers take to the smallest circuit on the calendar. And, well, whilst it was the smallest, it was by no means lacking in racing action. And indeed, many a daring overtake being made there. And that's when we saw our provisional classes for the first time. After that, we then made our way across the Atlantic Ocean all the way up to Canada for the Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. What the fact that Thruxton is not available in iRacing it currently stands, we decided to go for an alternative, and we went to the Canadian alternative, which was the Mosport Circuit, as it's known in short. And what thrilling racing we had there over the 3 races 7 through to 9, and it was the case on the 18th of August. We saw that finalisation of the classes come, the checkered flag of the final race, and indeed plenty of battles. After that, we did then head to Alton Park, back to United Kingdom for the circuit in the Cheshire countryside. And Alton Park, the national circuit, delivered there. There's no doubt about that. On the 25th of August, we saw plenty of overtake. We saw plenty of touring car also get heavily damaged as well. Some very daring overtakes and some major manoeuvres, and some that didn't quite work out as planned. But Alton Park delivered as it always does on the British touring car calendar. And indeed, then last time out, we were in the Netherlands, as we don't have Croft available, unfortunately, in iRacing as it currently stands. So we went for our Dutch alternative of Zandvoort Grand Prix circuit, and there we saw 3 thrilling races to wrap up the first half of the season. And whilst we did have some issues with the broadcast, I think you'll all agree when we were able to rejoin for that race number 3 at Zandvoort, we saw a huge battle for the win from start to finish over the course of the 20 minutes. It was a 7-car battle for the win, and in the end, it was a battle that went all the way to the final minute of the race, and what a way we wrapped up what was a brilliant start to the season. But now that we've had a week's break, we're now back with Knockhill on the 15th of September. After today, we'll be making our way a little bit southward back into England for what is the Eastern England circuit of Snetterton, the full 300 out with the infield and outfield sections. One to watch out for there on the 22nd of September. And as we don't have Thruxton, as we say, and the British Touring Car calendar for 2022 has made 2 visits to Thruxton, having made its 2nd visit recently, if my memory serves me correctly. It is the case where we're going to our Italian equivalent of the Monza Grand Prix circuit on the 29th of September. And then for our penultimate round, we'll be making our way to Silverstone for the national variant of the circuit on the 6th of October. And then we'll bring the curtain down. We will return to the Garden of England that is Kent for the Brands Hatch Hatch Grand Prix Circuit, the full iteration of Brands Hatch, and we'll bring it all to a close on the 13th of October, as is the tradition in touring car. It is the case the Brands Hatch Grand Prix Circuit acting as the closing stage for many a round over the course of the last couple of years of seasons, and well, what a thriller we have there. But of course, we've got a long way to go, and as we kick off this second half of the season starting at Knockhill, it is the case that this is a circuit like no other to go racing at, and we'll tell you a little bit more why shortly. But in terms of the season ahead and the calendar, it is the case whilst we have a full calendar, we also have a full championship roster. And as we look to the overall standings here, it is the case that after 5 rounds of racing, not accounting for drop scores at this point because they do not apply at this stage, they will apply a little bit later on, and we'll give you updated standings around rounds 8 or 9 which start to apply those drop scores in full effect. It is the case that going into this round overall, Jamie Dorey leads by a margin of what is 32 points over Gavan Gardener. But the story between these two has been a very interesting one. We have seen Jamie Dorey, who was running out front for the opening 3 to 4 rounds, has really now had to focus on keeping the pace and matching the Verano Motorsport pair of Gavan Gardener and Chris Daines. Of course, Chris Daines missing the season opener and missing a couple of races in between that and round number 5. It is the case that Gavan Gardener, the lead Verano Motorsport driver, on 216 points, with Chris Daines closing the gap rapidly. But really, it's the case with Jamie Dorey. He needs to try and get every single point he can and play a little bit of a Colin Turkington approach if you want to use a British touring car analogue, in the fact that sometimes it's not about the wins necessarily, it's about getting the maximum possible points for a race and focusing on delivering. Outside that top 3, we see Andrew Holmes down 167 points. Really been the best of the rest there, but only by 3 points versus Lee Horn. And it's been a very interesting contrast of the driving nature of Andrew Holmes and Lee Horn. Both drivers, very smart drives, but whereas Andrew Holmes was really hot out the blocks at the start of the season, has really had an uphill battle in the Hyundai Elantra, it is the case that Lee Horn, by comparison to the Honda Civic Type R, has really found his feet over the last couple of rounds, and therefore that's why he's up to P5. Then we have the family pair of John Higgins Jr. ahead of John Higgins Sr., separated there by what is a margin of 15 points, and both of them running the HSR Elantra and doing everything they can despite the woes of the car. Matthew Addy in P8, 3 points clear of Adam Delmont in P9, and then Ben Bennyworth, the first of our Pro-Am drivers there, in P10 overall, and Bennyworth has been running on fire in terms of the fact the last round at Zandvoort, picking up all 3 wins, if my memory serves me correctly, in the Pro-Am class. It is the case that he is looking unstoppable right now, and can anybody put a halt to the rise of Bennyworth in the Audi RS3? Well, his main rival, of course, for trying to do so in the Pro-Am class is Paul Scott in P11, but Paul Scott has not had the run of form that he's wanted, and particularly trying to get those points off of Ben Bennyworth, and then has been running as the main contender. Nigel Stock in P12, that unfortunately we're not going to be seeing Nigel Stock take to the circuit today. He'll be back for the round at Monza in 2 weeks' time. Unfortunately not available at this point in time, but we do wish him well. And then we'll have Mikey Doble there in P13, still not returning, unfortunately due to personal circumstances, but he's all okay, I can promise you that. Unfortunately, things have not worked out on the technical side with regards to the sim racing, but he's doing incredibly well right now in real world racing. Indeed, if anybody tuned into the Jetters at Brands Hatch last weekend, you'll know all about how well Mikey Doble is doing there, and congratulations to him, and we wish him all the best as he presses on. Rob McGregor in P14 there, and it is the case that Rob McGregor has not had the run he's wanted over the last couple of rounds. He's got plenty still to do, with John Burnham completing the top 15, and it's Mark Sykes, Matt Emmons, David Whitehouse, Thomas Delaney and Tony Vischav completing the top 20, and unfortunately we have to tell you that we'll not be seeing Matt Emmons join us on the circuit today. Unfortunately not able to make it due to personal circumstances, but we are expecting him back within the next 2 weeks. Outside the top 20 overall then, and not to be forgotten about, we have Colin Martin in P21 ahead of Gazwill P22, Michael Crees P23, Josh Brown P24, and Jamie Jenkins completing the overall standings. And Gazwill, they're gradually making his way up towards the top 20 there, putting in round after round of performance, but more importantly in the Pro-Am specific standings, we'll see shortly those performances are starting to yield results. As we now come on to the Pro classification, of course, this being our top tier of driver class, it is the case that Jamie Dorey leading by 30 points over Gavan Gardener. And really, as we said earlier, the story between these two is Jamie Dorey is the out front leader right now, but Gavan Gardener is definitely showing the pace to take on Jamie Dorey. And you can imagine if Jamie Dorey loses even one critical set of points in a round, it'll be the case that Gavan Gardener will be closing that gap very quickly. Meanwhile, we then have the HSR pair on 229 points apiece. Otherwise, John Higgins Jr. and John Higgins Sr. there. And it is the case the two HSR drivers trying to work their best and their magic to get back into that championship fight. With then Lee Horn in P5 there. And Lee Horn, the next-gen racing driver, doing very well, particularly last round, and really starting to come into his own form. And keep your eyes out for Lee Horn. He's definitely taking scalps and results along the way in the Pro class. Matthew Addy in P6 and 208 points. Joint 208 with Chris Daines there in P7. And Chris Daines last time out at Zandvoort taking the fastest lap in races 2 and 3. and also that pole position lap and solid performances, but it all went so horribly wrong in race number 3 with drama right towards the end, and it was the case that Chris Danes having to take that late retirement in race number 3 on a win or a major result, a podium result, which would have seen him right up there in the top 5, but not to be. And when we spoke to Chris Danes in the post-round interview, he was saying that he felt as though his championship aspirations in terms of that championship win may be heavily dashed, but to be fair, if we know one thing about Chris Danes, he will not give up until the final checkered flag, so keep your eyes on him. He's going to be looking to try and come home today, I think, with all 3 wins in the bag if he can. Andrew Holmes in P8 there, ahead of Adam Delman and Rob McGregor completing the Pro Top 10. And then Mikey Doble and Tony Verschaft there. Tony Verschaft only joined us for the one race at Zandvoort in P12. But as we now come to the Pro-Am standings, it is the case that Ben Bennyworth there, when we start to accrue just purely for the Pro-Am class, our second tier of classification for our drivers here in this series, it is the case that Ben Bennyworth there picking up all the points at Zandvoort Grand Prix Circuit. Unless I'm mistaken, it was the case getting the maximum point score and now on 262 points. The question is, can anybody stop him? Well, you'd like to think that Paul Scott could try to stop him, but the thing for Paul Scott is Nigel Stock is closing the distance to 20 points, albeit with Stock not being in attendance in the next 2 rounds. It is the case there that Paul Scott will be given a bit of breathing room to try and refocus and realign his aspirations to hunt down Bennyworth. P4 then, Matt Evans, who won't be attending tonight, as we mentioned earlier, 7 points clear of John Burnham, and this is a great opportunity for John Burnham to jump up into that P4 slot, with David Whitehouse there in P6 with a superb set of results at Zandvoort, particularly in race number 1, really building up there, but it wasn't to work out towards the end with some technical issues, particularly in race number 3, which saw him retire before he could get to the grid. Mark Sykes in P7 ahead of Thomas Delaney, Gaz Will and Michael Creed's P10 there, but Gaz Will, of course, our rookie, who's been off the pace since the start of the season, but that pace delta has gone from being 4 seconds a lap down to about 2 to 1.5 seconds a lap, and Gaz Will starting to build up a few more points there and just finishing the races. That's the most important thing for Gaz Will, and he is continuing to hunt down Thomas Delaney. Colin Martin, P11, best of the rest, ahead of Josh Brown, and then Mark Harrismith and Jamie Jenkins completing the Pro-Am standings. But as we come to the team's championship here, it is the case we see NXTGEN Orange now leading by a margin which is gradually diminishing, to be fair, of what is their 67 points. Well, in fact, I can't do maths. It is 66 points, I should say. And NXTGEN Orange consisting of Doble, Delmont and Dorey, feeling the impact there of the absence of Mikey Doble and also Adam Delmont for the last couple rounds. And it is my understanding that Adam Delmont may not be in participation tonight. So Dorey has got to wave the flag for the team, whereas HSR, by comparison, are coming out in full force with the Higgins family. And I do believe we may also at some point see Rob McGregor, unless I'm mistaken, on 349 points there. But they've got to keep doing well because NXTGEN Racing Green are not too far behind there with a gap of where it's only 24 points, and that's the combination of Lee Horn, Matthew Addy, Matt Evans and Gaz Will. Then NXTGEN Racing Blue, only a further 7 points behind. It is the case Crees, Scott, Sykes and Holmes continues putting those performances. Verano Motorsport there in P5 of Danes, Gardner and James on 286 points, and they're looking to try and jump into the top 4 fight. Then we have Prime stacking with White Racing. They're currently in P6, ahead of Crest Autosport with Pebbles in P7, and then completing our team's championship standings at SVPMR with NXTGEN on 49 points there, and that's how they currently sit after 5 rounds of racing. But as we come from our standings then to our circuit for today, well, we are on none other than the Knockhill Racing Circuit, located in County Fife, 6 miles short of Dunfermline in Scotland in the United Kingdom. This circuit, as you can see from the circuit map provided to us by the BTCC website, that's the British Touring Car Championship website, the .net website, it is the case, consists of 9 corners. It looks relatively short, and I can definitely tell you right now, this is one of the shortest circuits on our calendar, with a length of what is 1.27 miles, or just over 2 kilometres. But, and this is a big but, it is the case that this circuit, whilst it looks short, this image does not tell you the full story. And as we will see in qualifying very shortly when we ride on board with our drivers, it is a circuit full of undulations, of raised curbs, and also of some major blind apexes, and also some great overtaking zones, particularly Taylor's hairpin at turn number 9, and the run to Duffer's Dip at turn number 1. It is the case you need to be bold on the brakes if you want to make overtakes here, and this circuit encourages very close racing. And indeed, over the course of the last few years of British Touring Car Championship in the real world, we have seen when it goes right, the racing is superb, and when it goes wrong, well, drivers are going to be in very close proximity, and a few elbows do come out, and some cars may find their way going off circuit. And indeed, we had a fantastic return to Knockhill Circuit in the official British Touring Car Championship. Won't spoil the results there, but if you didn't tune into it, the circuit was absolutely superb and really showed the best of touring car, and we're hoping to emulate that tonight in the best of NXTGEN racing. But if our drivers are able to keep it on circuit through Duffer's Dip, all the way down through Leslie's into McIntyre's 3 corners, the first 3 corners perhaps perhaps the most free challenging corners on the circuit. They then have to deal with the run through butchers into black circle chicane of turns 4 through to 6, and that chicane in particular, well, we're not going to talk too much more about it right now. You'll get to see that fact that this circuit map does not tell you how scary that chicane is as a driver. I can tell you that now. And then Clark's Corner all the way through to Hislop's and Taylor's Hairpin complete the lap there in a more traditional format. As for our rules for tonight, in this case we have the same rules as always. In terms of setup, this is a fixed setup series, but we should point out here, we have recently had a significant update to the way touring cars are done on iRacing in two regards. Firstly, there's been a recent balance of performance update, which will see the balance of performance between the cars, which determines where they're strong at certain circuits and where they're weak at other circuits, or in terms of how their characteristics vary between one another. We have seen some slight adjustments with regards to that balance of performance, which may lead to certain cars performing a little bit better than we may expect them to at the Knockhill circuit, indeed the remainder of the season. But also there's been a major update to the damage model with regards to touring cars, more of an energy damage model, but how do we translate that into English? Well, you can imagine the cars now will be a bit more sensitive to contact. So whilst we are still expected there to be elbows out racing, and indeed it is the case, we may see some drivers get a little bit to and fro between one another. It is the case that some heavy contacts could do things such as damage the steering alignment of the car, or even more severely impact the suspension than we're used to. So we need to keep our eyes out for that. In terms of our sprint races, the race 1 grid, as always, will be set based on the results of qualifying. That's the tradition. Race number 2's grid shall be set based on the results of race number 1, where the winner of race number 1 starts on pole for race number 2, and last place finisher, of course, starts last for race number 2. And then in race number 3, we have the reverse grid based on the results of race 2, with the reversal position being drawn live by myself in the commentary booth from between 6th place and 12th place. So if we draw the number 8, for example, it is the case that the 8th place finisher in race number 2, they'll be starting on pole for race number 3. Meanwhile, our winner will be starting in P8. However, those who finish P9 downwards, they'll be starting where they finished in race number 2. And as for penalties, a driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 20 or more instant points. Well, that's about enough rules and regulations and everything in between. I know what you're all here for, and indeed I'm here for it as well. That is the race in action. As we return to the circuit, it is the case that we do look to our overall and Pro Championship leader here of Jamie Dorey, making his way on around in this final warm-up stroke practice session here. And whilst we don't have too many drivers in attendance at this current point in time, we have 12 drivers coming out on the circuit. We still do have a little bit of time for some drivers to arrive at the circuit, and I do believe that some of the drivers were caught in a bit of a traffic jam in the run up towards the Scottish circuit, so you can imagine here that some may just join at the last possible moment. But whilst we may not have a full grid in terms of 20 plus drivers here today, it is the case what we lack in quantity, we by no doubt make up for in terms of the quality of the race. And indeed this season so far has been full of quality moments. Indeed, I need more than just 2 hands to be able to count them. I would need about 10 different hands to be able to tell you all the different overtakes which really could go for candidates for overtake of the season. And indeed Zandvoort are really bringing that to life. There's so many classical moments. But speaking of classical moments, I know that you guys and girls have been enjoying some very classical moments in this series so far, and we check in with you guys and girls in the chat. Now, whether you're on the Facebook stream, or alternatively the YouTube stream, or the Twitch stream, we can see all 3 streams, and we do say hello in the YouTube chat there to Elwin Sykes. Hope you're doing well, Elwin, and saying, hey, Paul, my man, and well, Elwin, it's great to hear from you as always. And indeed, Elwin Sykes there, racing, not in this series, but he's raced in previous, what is it, Next Gen Racing Series, representing Racing Team Astra from South Africa. And well, it's been a little bit of time since we've last seen Elwin Sykes on screen, and we do hope to see you returning to the Next Gen Racing Series later this year in 2023, Elwin. And then we look to the Facebook chat there and see Katie saying, good evening, Paul, hope you're doing well. Well, more importantly, Katie, I hope you're doing well and all set for racing action as always. And I'm not doing that too bad. Really excited for this one. And then we say hello to Attack Ali there in the Twitch chat. I do believe that's Liam Tack, unless I'm mistaken. I'm a little bit awkward with usernames to real world names, but I do have confidence that is Liam there. And of course, Liam, one of our participants in the GT3 Championship, one of our AM drivers, and putting in some stellar performances, and also running in that classical Williams delivered Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo. And I hope you're doing well, Liam. And indeed, all those of you tuning in who haven't said hello in the chat, don't be shy, feel free to say hi. We don't bite here, but if you don't feel like saying hi, I hope you're all having a great week, because it is Thursday, of course, and it is the case that tomorrow is Friday. The weekend is almost here, and well, what better way to make your way towards the weekend than waiting for a little bit of touring car racing action. And well, speaking of touring car racing action here, what a classic throwback livery we're looking looking at there on Mark Arrowsmith's car, the Crest Autosport Pebbles driver here, bringing out the Halford machine, of course, the Halford livery on the Honda Civic Type R, albeit this is the FK8 Type R, not the FK2 Type R, where we did see this livery being featured in the past, if my memory serves me correctly, and all the Honda Civic designations line up in my mind, but it is the case. Still a classic livery there, and I do remember back to sitting on the living room couch with my family tuning into the touring car when those were the colours of the Halford machine as he makes his way up towards turn number 9. But as he does here, Arrowsmith right now just trying to get himself settled in, and well, as you can see, the lap times around here, we're looking at just over 50 seconds, and we must come from Arrowsmith all the way up to John Higgins Jr. and well, Team HSR, this is a critical round for them, not just because they've really had an uphill struggle with regards to the Hyundai Elantra over the last couple of rounds, with the fact it's really struggled in high temperatures, but also the fact this is HSR's home circuit. That's right, it is the case that John Higgins Jr. and John Higgins Sr. and also Rob McGregor, all based in Scotland, and this is their home circuit. As a result, they'll be looking to put in an absolutely brilliant performance today, and well, we can see Junior here doing a stellar job in this final warm-up session. Now, of course, these practice times, we can't read too much into them for the simple reason that it could be the case that some drivers are doing what we like to refer to as sandbagging, where they're holding back a little bit of time and not revealing their true pace. But it does look as though John Higgins Jr. here absolutely fired up, and it's his father behind here of Higgins Sr. rolling his way into turn number 7 as they make the way on through. And you can imagine Higgins Sr., of course, talking a lot of pride with regards to the team, and particularly his son, when they've been going racing. And there's been quite a bit of frustration in terms of HSR with that Elantra over the last couple of rounds, particularly back at the Motorsport circuit in round number 3. There was that degree of anger with regards to the fact the car just was not on the pace, but they were able to put it aside, focus on trying to extract the most out of the car, and we have seen them be very resilient in that regard as they push on. And we say hello there to Alan Baldwin in the YouTube chat there. Hope you're doing well, Alan, and you're all set for tonight. But we are running a little bit behind schedule here. It is the case that we'll be going to qualifying in about 3 minutes time, pretty more like 4 minutes time at this rate. But as our drivers continue to make their way around here, we currently have 12 in attendance, and we are just checking in with the organisers off screen to identify whether we've got anybody coming late. Well, we have had confirmation that Rob McGregor will be joining midway through qualifying, so keep your eyes out for him. He'll be the third HSR driver in attendance here today, and so they'll have a full roster going racing of 3 drivers. And as they make their way around here, we'll look to Gavan Gardener here, and of course the main contender to take on Jamie Dorey in the Pro Class Championship and the overall championship. And in the Audi RS3 here, it is the case that Gavan Gardener has really shown that this Audi, whilst it's a car that's not often picked when the touring car racing class on iRacing, it is a car that can do very well, and Gavan Gardener showing that, much like his teammate Chris Daines. And as Daines makes his way here into turn number 7, how you can tell the difference between the two drivers, look to the wheel rims. It is the case that Gavan Gardener in those very notable pink rimmed wheels, wherein, well, it is the case that Chris Daines running with the black rims by comparison. So that's how you tell the difference between the two there. But two great teammates, and indeed Verano Motorsport, a team that bring their A game every time, as we've seen over the course of this season, and indeed in previous seasons of Next Gen Racing Championships and iRacing. And we can imagine they'll be looking to do well, although at the moment it does look as though the trend is pointing towards the Elantras and the Civic Type Rs being quite strong around here. But then again, Chris Daines currently P4 in this practice session. We cannot read too much into it, but the form factor we would go with based on the data we've got available to us from a couple of months ago is the fact that the Elantra is the strongest of the cars around the Knockhill circuit on a single lap. The Honda Civic is a little bit scared of the curves, and when I say that, it's not the case that the car itself gets a fright, although you would think that, but the Honda Civic can be a little bit sensitive to the raised curves around this circuit, particularly when they make their way through the chicane of turns 5 and 6, and you can see just how high some of these curves are, albeit the cameras I don't think quite do justice to explaining exactly how high those apex curves are, and we'll see more from the onboards in qualifying. But the Civic may be the car that doesn't quite have the pace here today by comparison, and the Audi RS3 as well, a car which is known for its ability to accelerate very rapidly up to top speed and also have quite a high top speed, but the Audi not the strongest through the corners, and that may be its downfall here, because the lap around here does not really see our drivers go anywhere beyond 5th gear, and even when they get into 5th gear, it is the case they're not in 5th gear for long before they've got to go into the next corner, and therefore the Audi may find themselves at the bottom end. Well, to be fair, Chris Daines currently P4, and we can see there John Burnham P7, so it is the case. It may not be the true story, and we have to find it all out in qualifying in terms of where that lap place lies. Now, for the uninitiated, if you're wondering how you can tell who's pro and who's prime, you can see on the time tell that on the left-hand side of your screen. If they've got a green sash between their position number and their name, such as Matthew Adden, you can also see that in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. It is the case that means they're part of the pro class. Meanwhile, if they have got a pink purple sash like John Burnham has. He goes a bit off there at turn number 7. It is the case of Prime Stack and Solo Racing Drive getting it wrong, but that purple-pink sash tells you he's part of the Prime class there. And it is the case, of course, our drivers gaining points in both the overall championship based on overall finishing position, and then gaining points in the class championship based on their class finishing position. So right now, if we were in the middle of a race and it was to end as it currently stands, based on time in town, John Burnham would pick up P7 points for the overall championship, and he would pick up P1, the win points for the Pro-Am Championship. But with that in mind, we now have the checker flag out on this final warm-up session, and it's time for us to go racing. Currently 12 drivers in attendance. We do know that Rob McGregor's on his way, but let's head into the qualifying session then and see how they all get on with the 15-minute test to try and put in the best possible lap. Well, as that qualifying session gets underway, immediately everybody will be tearing their way out of the pit lane. A very tight pit lane around here. We have to put the maximum steering lock to get out of the pit. As we see Jamie Dorey making his way out, and immediately here, it is the case the next-gen racing driver makes and wastes no time in getting out onto circuit. And given the fact that the lap time here is less than a minute, it's just over 50 seconds, we are expecting upwards of 10 qualifying laps here to be done by drivers, perhaps even up to 13 or 14, depending on how long they want to stand out. But do keep in mind, of course, we can expect our drivers to make their way into the pit midway through qualifying to change the tyres though, to put on a fresh pair of boots, as we like to say, and also potentially to put a little bit more fuel in the car just to give them that leverage all the way to the end of the qualifying session. But Jamie Dorey, as he makes his way on around here, already coming up towards the final corner at Taylor's hairpin, and once he comes into the corner, it will be the case he'll be making his way on around. And we have lost our circuit map. We will just try and get that restored for you, and there is in the top right corner of your screen. And as he makes his way down towards the start finish line, let's ride on board with Jamie Dorey as he takes us around for the first flying lap of the Knockhill qualifying session. So making his way out across that line and then into turn number 1, looking for his brake mark on the left here and using the end of the pit lane exit, and as he rolls his way down through 1 into 2, balancing the throttle and then braking into turn number 3, straight in the steering wheel, and as he rolls his way through the right hand, it goes a little bit deep on the corner exit, rolling his way through 4 and now into the chicane here. It's completely blind as he rolls his way over the hill, and as he does it, you can see how high those curves are from the onboard perspective. Now heading into turn number 7 here, and to fight with the steering wheel as he trail brakes his way in, puts 2 wheels on the gravel there. It's going to cost him a little bit of speed in the run through the King of 8 as he charges all the way out through the curve straight up towards turn number 9 here into the final corner and braking as late as he dare, about 100 metres from corner apex, and coming through the right hander. And as he does here, it is the case Jamie Dorey not quite composed on this open lap, but to be fair, he's got a lot of time to improve upon lap and get that tyre temperature if he comes to the line. And what's the lap going to be for Jamie Dorey there? Well, I believe the lap has been counted, and it is a 53.432, and that is one of many laps that Dorey will be putting in here in this qualifying session. But indeed, setting the pace and the first driver to strike a 53, whereas everybody else 54s or 55s of those who've set time so far. But we have got plenty of time, but even in that small space of 53 seconds. So hopefully you've already seen just how tricky this circuit is with those higher curves, and the fact as well a good number of these corners, particularly chicane, are completely blind in terms of you are committing to a corner and having to literally believe in your memory in terms of where it is, the corner. And it's the same from the run through turns 1 through to 3, and the fact that turn 2, you cannot see turn 2 until you've cleared turn 1, and by then, when you've cleared turn 1, you've got to have already set the car up for turn number 2. You cannot see the corner and prepare for it. You've just got to believe that the corner's there and you've lined the car up effectively. And as Dorey comes across that timeline this time around, it looks as though it's going to be an improvement. He's into the 52s, the 52.864. Meanwhile, we see Ben Bennyworth here making his way down the start finish straight, and more times piling on in here, and we see that John Higgins Jr. has taken provisional pole with a 52.289, and well, that is a margin of 2.5 tenths versus Chris Daines, but still plenty more laps to come on in. Now, as we can see, all of our lead drivers then in this qualifying session right now running in a line of stern formation here, essentially trying to gain the tail for one another, and you can do that in these touring car racing class cars. As we see there, Matthew Addy getting it very wrong, coming out of turn number 6 and bringing the car to a gradual halt there, and you can see really having to be careful. These are heavy cars, these touring car racing machines, all of them being front engine, front wheel drive of course, with the engine in the front, and it is the case all the power goes to the front wheels, and the front wheels also have to do all of the steering, so that makes them very tricky. They're very prone to understeer. And one thing I have been hearing down in the paddock from some drivers, and particularly Jamie Dorey, who gave me some insights in the build up to tonight with the revision of the balance of performance of the cars, also the energy model for collisions, and also there's been some slight adjustments to the way the touring car racing class in general has been modelled in iRacing. These cars now are a lot more sensitive to understeer on that front end, in terms of the fact when they're going into corners, it's not the case you can just plant the throttle as soon as you clear apex and hope the car's going to turn on through. You have to be much more sensitive on that throttle invert. Go too hard too soon, and you'll find that the car just simply tries to straight line on, and you'll hear the wheel screech, as it is the case you're trying to get them to turn, but all they want to do is go in a straight line, and that is something our drivers are going to be able to be wary of, particularly coming through the chicane of turns 5 and 6, and also through corners like Taylor's hairpin at turn number 9, in the fact that they get on that power too soon and try to floor it, they might find themselves flooring their way off in towards the tyre barrier beyond the gravel trap. But as we do watch here, Matthew making his way up towards the final corner, a bit more composed this time in the Honda Civic compared to the previous lap, and as he makes his way around, we see Dorey there improves to P2 on a 52.359, still plenty of time to go, only just coming up to the first 5 minutes cleared, and as that time continues to go, you can imagine the rubber being laid down on the circuit, track temperature is going to come up to a degree, and the track will become more compliant with regards to improving lap time. And speaking of improving lap time, here it is the case. Gavan Gardener is definitely going to want to improve his lap time as he makes his way through turn number 7. And right now, well, one of our major championship contenders overall in the Pro Championship not enjoying this circuit as it currently stands here as he makes his way up towards the final corner. But of course, right now, I think he might just be settling himself in and of course recognising that he's got plenty of time in this session. It's not as though he has to deliver immediately, but of course he can deliver a lap early on. It gives you a little bit more of a comfort zone. But we ride on board here with the Audi RS3 drivers. He heads around for a lap, throws the P10 as he makes way into turn number 1 here. We'll see the difference in the fact he has to brake a little bit earlier compared to Dorey as he rolls his way down the hill there through to an into 3. It's the case having to point the car straight as possible into that braking zone for 3, exiting out the corner and now through the kink for 4 before rolling his way into the chicane. And as he rolls his way over here, you can see the Audi just bouncing off those curves very comfortably there, looking very compliant. Now into turn number 7, he rolls it into the right-hander here, scored over the hill and now down towards turn number 8 he rolls as he charges all the way up to the final corner and building up through the gearbox here. You'll notice on that gear shifter on the left-hand side of your screen, or that dashboard I should really say, the fact that Gardner, much like most of our Audi drivers, they're going to have to be much higher gears compared to their peers, and the fact that this Audi's gearbox is focused around the higher gears as he makes it out the final corner there from 3rd gear up to 4th gear right now. This might be the source of why the Audi just does not have the pace by comparison on that single lap, and the fact that it's having to run a higher gear and therefore it's normally bogging down in the RPM band compared to say the Honda Civic, alternatively the Elantra. We see that Gardner improves the P8 and takes a huge amount of turn 1 apex curve there, putting the car up on 2 wheels, and to be fair, that's what you need to do. If you want to get the best possible lap times around Knockhill, you do have to be very bold, you have to be brave of heart, and as he makes his way out to the chicane this time, well, Gardner definitely hooking everything up as best as possible as he makes his way through turn number 7. And I think really now starting to settle into a rhythm here, and that is important as well in the fact we've talked about rhythm over the course of the opening 5 rounds and how that's critical in each and every circuit. But at Knockhill, it really is key, and I can tell you from experience of racing around here in iRacing as well, when you're in the zone and you've got the circuit hooked up in your mind, you don't worry about those curves, you don't worry about making the corners. It's almost as if muscle memory just starts to take over and each and every corner just flows naturally as Gardner moves up to P6 there. He's in the ascendancy right now and continues to put in those lap times. But as soon as you lose that rhythm, as soon as you lose that mental flow and that mental stability, it's almost as if you have to reassure yourself that these curves, they're not going to get you. You're the master of the car, and that's the one thing that's so critical, particularly in the race. The driver who can keep his head down, get on with the job, and not fall out of that rhythm is going to do very well. And it had to be said that Mark Sykes right now in the Hyundai Veloster, making his way out of turn number 8, looking to find a bit more momentum to go after Ben Bennyworth. But other than Bennyworth up in P5, Mark Sykes is the best of the rest of the Proms right now in that P2 in the Prom qualification, P8 overall as he makes his way through the hairpin and onwards towards the start-finish straight. Now, a little bit of trivia here for those of you interested. It is the case that the timing line at the Knockhill circuit for where we go racing at the very start and where we conclude the races, they're not the same point on circuit. If my memory serves me correctly, it is the case that the start-finish line is further along the start-finish straight, whereas the actual finish line or the timing line for completing a lap is actually a little bit closer to the final corner. It's only about 75 metres distance, if that. I think it might actually be a bit of shorter distance, but also it does mean that effectively the run to the finish line is shorter coming out the hairpin, therefore our drivers do not have as long to draft past one another, and that could be critical later on. But speaking of being a little bit later on in this qualifying session, in this case he's joined later than everybody else, but he is here now. He's our 13th driver for today, and hopefully not unlucky for him, it is Rob McGregor, and it's great to see McGregor taking to the circuit, of course, after what was a difficult first half of the season, as we said for HSI in general, but Rob McGregor in particular not quite performing to the standards he set himself, and particularly at Zandvoort, he was talking a bit about that, but it is the case here on his first flying lap, and we are right on board here with the Elantra driver as he takes us onto a lap. rolling his way into turn number 1 here. I think he's going to have to try and get the car up to temperature as he makes way through 2 and 3, as he has not had that long out on circuit. In fact, you can see that the car understeering a little bit on braking entry and having to really fight the car into the apex of turn 3. But now it's starting to come alive as he makes his way through the chicane, and as he does, just about keeps it within the limits. They're carrying a lot of momentum as he now makes his way into turn number 7, rolling through the right-hander here. Over the crest he goes, absolutely abusing those apex curves there, which you can do in the Elantra. It is a car that absolutely loves the curves, and as he makes his way all back towards turn at number 9 here, well, this has been an improvement lap in Sector 1. Sector 2, he's not quite improved on his personal best, but as he makes his way through the right-hander here of the final corner, how's it going to look come the end of the lap? Well, it's not looking to be anywhere near the lap times we've seen set so far, or is it as he crosses that timeline? And for McGregor, it's the first lap on the board. It's a 53.864 as he makes his way on around once again, but it's nowhere near getting into the top 10 right now. He does have a gulf of what is half or 6/10 of a second to Paul Scott, who's in the pit lane. 5 minutes left in this qualifying session. We've still got plenty of time to go here, but time is wearing out gradually. And speaking of wearing out, he's not wearing out right now, and indeed, he's not run on thin ice either. It is the case that Chris Danes at the top of the pile at the moment with regards to those lap times on a 52.058, and as he tops the time machine by 2.5 tenths almost over John Higgins Jr. You would imagine here that Chris Danes definitely trying to deliver each and every lap, but can he do it? That will be the big question as he makes his way on around through what is their turn at number 8 and down towards 9. But as he charges down in towards the braking zone here, it is the case that Danes, well, he may not have been looking the strongest in the practice session, but I think he's been keeping a card up his sleeve, and as a result now, it is the case he is showing his true capabilities here. And to be fair, Chris Danes, if he's not on form in practice, he'll use the practice session in the first half of qualifying. We've heard this a couple of times, to get himself really into that rhythm. Once that rhythm clicks, it is the case the Rhino Motorsport driver just looks absolutely menacing on the timing sheets, and he is delivering right now. And his teammate Gavan Gardener, to be fair, up to P4, wasn't looking strong early in the qualifying session, but we did see him in the ascendancy, and that ascendancy continuing now. P4, can he potentially make it a Rhino Motorsport lockout in that front row? We saw that earlier in the season, of course, at the Canadian Tire Motorsport Park in round number 3, where they were able to make it a Rhino Motorsport 1-2 in races 1 and 2. Not able to quite make it a 1-2 in each and every race at the Canadian circuit, but if they could lock out that front row, it would set themselves up very well, because overtaking here at Knockhill, it's possible, but it's also requiring you to be very close to the driver in front. You've got to put a lot of pressure on the driver in front to make an overtake, and that's the key thing. Track position does become ever more important given the nature of the circuit. As we see, Gardner moves up to P3. He is currently only 6 thousandths off of this man, John Higgins Jr., as he makes his way down towards turn at number 9. As Higgins Jr. comes on through here, it is the case the HSR driver firing all cylinders and rolling his way into turn number 9. And as he comes through in the number 5 car here, it is the case that his fellow teammates of McGregor P10 and also Higgins Sr. P11 there, McGregor and Higgins Sr. not quite on the pace of Junior as he makes his way across the timeline right now. It is the case going on to another lap here, and he'll have 3 more laps in which to try and take that pole position. But it does look as though Chris Danes has found a lot of time out there, and perhaps it is a bridge too far for them to be able to get across and close the gap. But then again, anything can happen. We have to wait until the checker flags out in this qualifying session. Meanwhile, Ben Bennyworth here, we talked a little bit about him earlier, albeit mostly off camera, but right now currently P6 after being demoted by Rob McGregor, who's jumped up to P5 there. A nice lap by McGregor, 52.610. In this case here, Ben Bennyworth P6, and he is currently 2 places clear of Mark Sykes in P8, his main pro-am rival in this qualifying session, and the delta between the two of them is only, and we should make this very clear, it is only a gap there of what is, it's less than a tenth. It's not even a half attempt. It's such a small margin at this point, anything could change if somebody's able to hook up a better lap. And we see there, Jamie Dorey jumps up to P4, John Higgins Sr. jumps up to P5, Ron McGregor drops down to P6 as a result of those 2 promotions. As we do see there, Ben Bennyworth getting it a bit wrong at turn number 3, and perhaps right now he's pushing himself too hard to deliver at the final hurdle in this qualifying session. And could Mark Sykes suddenly pull the rug out from underneath him and say, I'll take that pole position in the pro class, thank you very much? We'll have to wait and see. Meanwhile, Mark Arrowsmith here, currently P11, making his way on to another lap here, trying to find a way to get himself inside that top 10 with not long left to go. And as he makes his way down through 1, 2 and 3, it is going a bit deep there at turn number 3, missing the apex curb, and as a result, that's going to cost him a bit of momentum in the kink of 4 and up through the chicane of 5, 6. And as he rolls his way through, I think this is going to be a bit more of a sighting lap by comparison, and then he'll have to deliver on the next time round. And well, he'll only have 1 more lap to go if my mental maths is correct, given his position on circuit. He's not going to have the time to put in taking another 2. It will just be 1 more lap. But the clock's ticking down. We've only got a minute left in this qualifying session, plus the overtime for our drivers to complete their final laps. And right now it is Chris Daines who sits on pole position provisionally, over on in the pro class there by 2.5 tenths almost over John Higgins Jr. Meanwhile, in the Pro-Am class, it is Ben Bennyworth who's currently sitting in pole position by only 300 in the Pro-Am class over Mark Sykes there, currently sat in P7 as we hear Rob McGregor's improved to 52.448, but it has not promoted him further up the order. But Chris Daines coming to the timeline here. Will he be able to improve? He does. He's the first driver to break into the 51s. It's a 51.972, and I think this is more than enough from Chris Daines as we hear that Mark Sykes is in the pit lane. In fact, as I look out my commentary box window, there you can see him parking up, does Mark Sykes. He's had enough. He puts the car up in the jacks. Mark Arrowsmith as well is parked up in the pit lane, and he's decided he's not got any more in the car. And Paul Scott there in a frustrating qualifying session. P13 is where he'll start. He'll be the last on the grid. It has not worked out for him, but meanwhile we've still got more laps to come on in here, including John Burnham, who's just crossed the timeline to go into his final lap as he makes his way on down. But as he comes charging on down, it is the case. We've got Rob McGregor coming to the timeline. What is he going to be able to do as he crosses the line? He's P6 currently. Can he improve? No, he does not. We've still got more drivers coming on through, including there what is, I do believe, Lee Horn and Chris Daines. They both decide to abort and come into the pits. There's no more time for them out of the circuit. Meanwhile, Matthew Addy comes out the final corner. Is it going to be improvement here for Addy? It's looking as though it could be close. No, he's decided to abort the lap. Meanwhile, here we've also got Jamie Dorey. And Jamie Dorey here looking quite fast on this lap. He crosses the line. And what's it going to be for him? Is it an improvement? Well, it is. It's the P. What is there? P5. In fact, he's dropped, and that's John Higgins Sr. who's jumped to P2 right at the finish for 52.057. Well, wherever that's come from, he's been saving it up, and that is absolutely superb from Higgins Sr. Meanwhile, it is the case that Higgins Jr. not able to improve. He'll start P3, and Rob McGregor coming to the line here, and as he does, I mean, it's the case that Rob McGregor will be our last driver to come on through. Can he improve from P6? He crosses that timeline, and, well, I think it is P6 where he will stay. So it's Chris Daines who takes overall pole position and also in the pro class. Meanwhile, it's Ben Bennyworth who takes pole position in the pro class in P7. But John Higgins Sr. delivering right at the end there. And, well, it's the case. He's looking strong. Indeed, the Higgins family and HSR as a whole looking very strong here today at their home circuit. But as the grid's now being formed, let's take you through the grid as they line up for race number 1. So starting on pole for race 1 of round 6 in the Next Gen Racing Touring Car Championship here at the Knockhill Circuit, it is Chris Daines who out-qualified John Higgins Sr. by just under a tenth. The HSR driver joining the Rhino Motorsport driver on the front row. We then have John Higgins Jr. who starts off row number 2 for HSR, joined by Gavan Gardener for Rhino Motorsport. And then we have Jamie Dorey from Next Gen Racing Orange, P5, starting off row number 3. His worst qualifying session of the season, in fact. He is joined by Rob McGregor from HSR. Then we have Ben Bennyworth starting P7, our Pro-Am pole sitter, ahead of Lee Horn P8. Mark Sykes and Matthew Addy on row number 5. Mark Arrowsmith and John Burnham, the 2 Pro-Ams on row number 6. And then on our last row, Paul Scott, P13 for Next Gen Racing Blue. He's got it all to do in the race. But as we are right now just waiting for one or two drivers to get themselves set on the grid here, it is the case we look from the grid classification to the actual info here. It's race number 1. We're about to get underway. There's not long to go. Less than a minute before we get the green light, and there'll be lights out and away we go. And we are just now waiting for 2 more drivers to take to the grid, and once they have, we'll be going racing for 20 minutes. With everybody itching to go racing here, the blimp's making its way across the circuit, and you can see all our drivers in their splendour. We're just waiting on Paul Scott at the back of the field for the gridding process right now. 30 seconds on that timer left, and well, Chris Daines will start on the inside in the run to turn number 1. Well, the grid is set, and now we wait for the lights. Alright then, ladies and gentlemen, here come the lights. One red light, two red lights, three red lights, four red lights, five red lights, and it's lights out. Away we go for race number one here at Knockhill, and Chris Danes gets away with a brilliant start there. John Higgins Sr. caught standing by comparison as they make the way down towards turn number one. Now look at Gavan Gardener trying to go around the outside here as he's got Jamie Dorey on his inside. They roll their way down the hill through two, and into three they go. Jamie Dorey defends on the inside into three. It's a brilliant start there from Gavan Gardener, but he's not able to completely get the move for P3 as they make the way through the right-hander of four, and as they do we can see, oh goodness me, Gavan Gardener in contact and behind Lee Horn as well. Two drivers in contact initially, and Lee Horn follows on through. Turn four catching the drivers on out, but as they now return to the circuit here, meanwhile Rob McGregor up the inside there, and Ben Bennyworth for P5 immediately jumping up into the top five, and Rob McGregor wasting no time here, gaining the place at the start as they make the way on down up towards turn number 9. But as they come charging on down, it is the case. I do believe the safety car may have been deployed, given the fact it is making its way out of the pit lane after that instant, and well, that is unfortunate if so, and that will curb our racing to a degree as we see Chris Danes coming across that timeline, and he's going to pick up the safety car very shortly. And in fact, there is the safety car parked on up, and now it's getting up to speed. But we have had an incident on the opening lap, a number of drivers getting caught up in that incident, and indeed that does bring a brief pause to the racing, but it does give us an opportunity to take a look back at exactly what happened between Gavan Gardener and Jamie Dorey in particular. This was only moments ago, and as they made the way on through the right-hander at turn number 4 there, well, bit obscured by the camera, but it looks like Gardner was really caught up in that situation and lost the car to a degree. We take another look back to see exactly what happened. And this is from the rearward perspective on the camera, and as they made their way through, Gardner on the grass, and the car just became destabilised, and Lee Horn in a similar situation here, but of his own volition, getting it wrong, where it was the case that Gardner tried to commit to the move. It didn't quite work out in the end, and that's the way it has lied, but it's the case that 3 drivers involved in instance on the opening lap. We've got Lee Horn in the pit lane right now, we've got Gavan Gardener gradually catching up to the field, we've already got Jamie Dorey in P10 on the back of this field. The safety car's making its way on around right now, being piloted by Gareth Williams, or Gaz Williams as he likes to be known in short, and I think it will do one more lap before he'll be coming on in here with the field already bunching back up. We've got Lee Horn leaving the pit lane, he's making his way on around the circuit here. Indeed, before they go racing once again, Chris Danes starting with a brilliant standing start there. All of it's been neutralised by the safety car, of course, but he is ahead of John Higgins Sr. They stay as they were on the grid, and then we've got John Higgins Jr. P3 with Rob McGregor up 2 places to P4. Ben Bennyworth behind in P5. He's your Pro-Am leader, and he started, of course, in P10. He's gained 2 places. Matthew Addy gaining 4 places at the start, up to P6. Great gain from Matthew Addy. Mark Sykes P7, Paul Scott P8, John Burnham P9, Jamie Dorey, of course, one of the biggest losers at the start of this race, losing 5 places in P10. Mark Harris with P11, not gaining, not losing. Gavan Gardener P12, they're the biggest loser of them all, having started on that second row. And Lee Horn right now making his way across that time, and I don't think he's going to quite catch the field if we are to go racing at the end of this safety car lap. But it is the case Lee Horn there's got it all to do, and it's not the way he's wanted to start off his proceedings. But as they make the way on around at this time, will we see Chris Danes be given the right to back off from the safety car as they make the way through the final corner here, or will we have another lap behind the Cayman safety cars? They make the way across that time, and we've got one more lap here as we're waiting for Lee Horn to get onto the back of the pack. I would imagine he's been decided as not being close enough to go racing once again here. They do have drivers who, it is the case if a driver has come out the pits, they're given a certain amount of time in which they're allowed to catch up to the field, and one more lap has been given. But as they make the way on around here, we do say hello there in what is Sir in the Twitch chat to Sir Bottlejob, saying, to quote the late Murray Walker, and it's happened immediately. Indeed it has happened immediately, and it was between the 2 Pro Championship contenders of Gardner and Jamie Dorey coming to blows. But to be fair, I think Gardner just trying to hang it around the outside at turn 4 into the chicane, finding the grass instead as he tried to bring the car to the chicane, and the car just snapping away from him. But I have a very strong feeling this time around it will be the case the safety car will be coming on in. In fact, you can see the safety car's already run off, and Chris Danes just taking his time into turn number 7, giving himself breathing room. Of course, the safety car will be required to make its way all the way past the final corner before we go racing once again. Indeed, it's got to be on its way into the pit, but Danes bunching the field up here as we look at the blimp camera and we wait for him to take us racing once again. as all the field close up, Lee Horn is now on the back of the field as well, so we are green to go racing. And there goes the Rhino Motorsport driver. He decides to go in the run to turn number 8. He gives it a little sprint to the turn number 9, I should say. He gives it a little sprint, and we go racing once again. 15 minutes still on the clock here in race number 1 at Knockhill. And as they make their way up towards the timeline, it's a brilliant restart there from Danes. Meanwhile, Jamie Dorey trying to make an early move here versus John Burnham for P9. Now, has he got enough momentum in the Civic? We know the Civic struggles on the straights by comparison. And as they make their way into turn number 1, Dorey's going to be brave. The door's still slightly open, but in the end, Burnham holds him at bay, and Dorey backs out there sensibly so, not able to find that move early on. And to be fair, that would have been very bold to go from that far back. But as they make their way on down through turn number 4 and up towards 5 and 6 they go. It is the case there, Jamie Dorey trying to gain places as quickly as possible as they now head up towards turn number 7. As they roll the way on through, we've got a car off there. It's John Higgins Sr. getting it wrong at turn number 7. And as they rejoin, we can see the HSR team all running together, P2 to P4. But they won't want to be in instance by another as Rob McGregor up the inside of Higgins Sr. into the final corner there. And they swap their places around. Meanwhile, Bennyworth, by comparison, battling here with Mark Sykes. And Bennyworth having been passed. Well, in fact, he's passed Mark Sykes back up. The Sykes got ahead of him in the drag race up towards turn number 9. But this is the battle of the prime leader as they come across the timeline and head on to another lap. And as they do, Bennyworth on the left, Sykes on the right, your picture. Into the braking zone they go. Bennyworth holds the inside here. He holds the position, or does he? Sykes loses the rear of the car, and Sykes is off. And that's going to be into the wall there. It's a big shunt into the tyre barrier there, losing the car. He's jumped to the pits as they roll the way on around at this point. I think given the fact that he's had the instant off circuit, a safety car may not be called for that. But meanwhile, Gavan Gardener here trying to make a recovery race early on. And he goes a bit to the gravel there, but he's going to make the move around the outside of Lee Horn into turn number 7. This is going to be brave if he gets it done here. Can't really overtake around the outside at 7. He doesn't get it done. But as they make the way all the way down the curve straight up towards the hairpin, in this case a bit further up in front, Jamie Dorey's just found his way past John Burnham, and now Burnham's having to worry about the fact that he has got Lee Horn and Mark Arrowsmith literally swarming on his 6 as Lee Horn goes deep on the outside there to try and go around Arrowsmith. But Arrowsmith in return here gets the X out of turn number 9, and as they drag race their way to the timeline here, Arrowsmith is going to lose out a little bit. I don't think he's got the draft by comparison, and therefore he'll lose that straight line speed by 1 to 2 miles an hour. As you can see here, Gavan Gardener trying to go around the outside into 1. It's not going to happen, surely not yet, given the fact that we've only just gone racing once again. That Audi takes some time to get back up to the temperature. Meanwhile, the Civic switches on a bit faster, and as they make the way through turn number 3, they stay as they were for the time being. But as he tries to find his way and pick his way through the order, Mark Sykes in the pit lane. They are doing repair work to the car, I should point out. Meanwhile, Jamie Dorey then makes his way past Paul Scott, and I believe that Paul Scott there just having a bit of a slow run coming out of the chicane, and Dorey capitalising up the inside as they roll the way out to turn number 7 and up towards turn number 9 once again for the 7th time of asking. But as they come charging on through here, the field stabilises for a little bit at this time, albeit we do have to wait and see what moves are coming later on. But I can tell you right now, there is a huge concertina effect in the battle for P8 right now behind what is Paul Scott. And as they make their way down the start-finish straight here, you can see that Arrowsmith flashed his lights versus Lee Horn, trying to get into the head of the Pro driver here as we ride aboard with the Crystal Sport Pebbles driver making his way down onto another lap. And as he does, of course, the thing here, when you're racing this close at Knockhill, you have to be very particular with where you decide to brake when you're running close to the driver in front, and the fact you cannot afford to brake at your standard braking point. As we see there, Horn gets that bit rolled sideways through the chicane. He catches the car, does Lee Horn, and Mark Arrowsmith there fully commits up the inside. Meanwhile, up the road, it's the case that Matthew Addy's making his way between the HSR cars. Rob McGregor's had an off track, and it looks so here, Matthew Addy, well, whatever he's been fed before this race, where he's had his 2 Weetabix or something else, he's fine. Oh, goodness me, there's contact with McGregor. But Addy, the point being right now, is feeling racy, and he's going for it here. We'd love to see it as he makes his way down towards turn number 1. But as he does here, he's still got plenty of time to go. He should know that he does not need to make every move right now. He can afford to take his time in his moves to a degree as they make the way into turn number 3. But Addy on a charge here as he makes his way down through 3 and into 4. And the Civic driver right now absolutely delivering. But the question is, what happened between Higgins Sr. and Rob McGregor on that previous lap? Well, we'll find out very shortly. But before we do, Jamie Dorey here looking up the inside of Bennyworth for P6. Bennyworth not fighting it into turn number 7. Although I say that he's going to try and hold it around the outside, and be fair to Bennyworth, holding the position there and showing no fear in battling with the Pro Championship leader. Meanwhile, up front, Matthew Addy here trying to go for that move around the outside of Higgins Sr. And Higgins Sr. under huge pressure And the Honda driver, it's almost as if he's got a completely different level of grip around the outside there. And as they charge their way down the start-finish straight, well, Addy's ahead by the nose, but he's on the outside into turn one, and Higginson is not going to back out here, or is he? No, he's not, as they make their way on through, and as they do, they form back into formation here, and Addy, oh, goodness me, and was there contact between McGregor and Addy? Addy into the tyre barrier there, and, well, the front end of that car is crumpled. He will not be going racing with that machine. That is very unfortunate, and we'll take a look back at that very shortly. But meanwhile, Ben Bennyworth is keeping Jamie Dorey at bay as they make their way into turn number 7 once more, with half the race remaining as we hit the 10-minute mark. But as they come on through here, we'll have to wait to see if Dorey's able to find a way to get past Bennyworth, who right now just seems to know exactly where that Audi's able to keep the fast Charger Pro behind at bay, as the Pro driver right now really trying to hold them to a top 5 finish in the overall standings. But as they make the way through, we see further back here, we've got Gardener still trying to pick his way past Aerosmith, as Matthew Addy has had to jump to the pits after that damage. And I can tell you that Gardner is not gained any places through overtakes right now. He's only gained through attrition since the restart, and he's got a lot to do here, as we're hearing that Mark Sykes is making his way out of what is the pit lane and now back onto circuit, but he will be 2 laps down on the field given the repair work he's had to do on the car. But still, it's great to have him out there. And meanwhile, Gardner's going to try and go around with the outside to, sorry, the inside to outside here. As we can see, it is the case that Aerosmith there holding the outside to inside defensive line, and Aerosmith holds the place. And to be fair, our Honda drivers here, well, they may not have had the pace in 1 lap qualifying, but they have definitely got the pace in the race here. It's almost as if it's a completely different animal in race conditions as they make the way on down. Meanwhile, a bit further up the road, we can see it is the case here that John Burnham up the inside of what is Lee Horn for P8. But as they make the way out the corner here, of course, Lee Horn has the outside line as they make the way across that timing line down the start finish straight, and Lee Horn just about able to get his nose ahead as they make the way into turn number 1. And on the brakes they go, and as they do, Burnham has to back out here. Lee Horn just has enough to hold firm. Meanwhile, Gavan Gardener has finally found his way past what is Mark Aerosmith there. It has taken him the best part of what is 7 laps to be able to do it, and Aerosmith's on the grass and the car slides, but it stops short of the wall there, and he's able to go racing once again, but he will drop to P11 there. Meanwhile, Jamie Dorey trying to find his way past Bennyworth on the inside into turn number 7, and as they make the way on through this time around, I think he will get it done. Although I say that, Jamie Dorey now having to really trying to hold that inside line and battle on the brakes here versus Bennyworth, and as they make the way into turn number 9 up the inside there. Now, will he have the momentum out the corner? He does indeed, and Bennyworth, I think, just not able to get that cut back front, as meanwhile behind we can see that Lee Horn, well, he is ahead of Paul Scott there for the time being. In fact, after getting his way past what was John Burnham, now making his way past Paul Scott as they make the way down towards turn number 1 here, rolling into the right-hander as they make the way onto lap number 13, and Lee Horn now trying to charge on after Ben Bennyworth for P6. But whilst we do have a breather, let's take a look at exactly what happened to Matthew Addy. So making the way on down the hill here, that was Rob McGregor behind. Now, was there contact? There was contact between the two, I suspect, there as they made the way on down the hill, and that's what sent Addy on around. We take a look back at it from Rob McGregor's perspective, meanwhile, as they made the way down the hill. And it does look as though there was a bit of a tap there from Rob McGregor. That shows you how close they were running together. And in the end, McGregor soldiering on. But it is the case that Matthew Addy, I think, will be reporting that one to the stewards room after race. Of course, there's no live stewarding for these races, all post-round stewarding. But that's the story between Addy and Rob McGregor in that battle down through turns 1 through to 3 a few laps ago. And why Addy right now is in the pit lane with repair work being done to the car. In fact, I think he's back out on circuit now, unless I'm very much mistaken. But he is 2 laps down the field in P12. But now returning to these live pictures, we can see John Burnham here after being passed by Paul Scott and also what is Lee Horn. He's now under pressure from Gavan Gardener here. It's Audi on Audi as they make the way through turns 5 and 6, and as they roll their way up towards turn number 7, it is the case that Burnham definitely feeling a bit of pressure, and on the Audi train he wants to try and get back past Paul Scott. He wants to get close enough, but I think Gavan Gardener here getting a better run out of turn number 7 by comparison as they make the way through the King of 8. Now Gardner's going to have the inside line here. Burnham's going to try and squeeze him as much as possible, but Gardner's going to go all in on the brakes here. I think he has to, given the fact he's running out of time in this race, and he needs to gain as many places as possible for the simple reason racing. Remember, grid for race number 2 is set based on the finishing position of race number 1 in terms of where Gardener finishes in this race. That's where he starts in race number 2, and he knows he's got the pace to be on that second row of the grid, and he needs to fight his way up there to at least get in towards that top 6 right now, because otherwise those points are going off into the distance. With Jamie Dorey in P5, it won't be huge damage, but it's damage still the same in terms of those championship standings, and Gavan Gardener cannot afford that at this point of the championship. But meanwhile, as he makes his way through, we look to John Higgins Sr. here with Rob McGregor behind. And some of you may recall earlier, before Matthew Addy got into the mix, there was a little bit of an instant, we do believe, between McGregor and John Higgins Sr. We're just going to take a look back at exactly what happened. Well, this was before they came together with Matthew Addy. Now making their way into turn number 7, Rob McGregor drifted. In fact, both of them there in synchronous drifting through turn number 7, and that explains why Matthew Addy came out of nowhere with so much pace. Both drivers there pushing a bit too hard, and in the end, Addy trying to get the move done, and well, the rest was history, as we saw then the run all the way up towards turn number 1, but they were 3 wide at one point. You see McGregor, they've been forced out on the inside on the exit of turn number 9. Well, as they made the way across the timeline there, it was the case. They then went into turn number 1, and it all kicked off from there. But as we return to the live pictures right now, it is the case that McGregor and Higgins Sr., well, both having a near miss at turn number 7 earlier on. And meanwhile, behind you can see Matthew Addy there, albeit this time he is a whole couple of laps down on the field, so he's not going racing anymore. He will be blue flagged to say that he needs to let the lead lap drivers through. But you can imagine he will know he's got the pace here to be right in the hunt for a potential podium. He's just got to be able to unleash it, as we see flashing lights there for Jamie Dorey. I think trying to flash ahead, but I don't think that's going to really work versus Rob McGregor right now. He'll be used to seeing flashing lights as they make their way down to turn number 1. It is the case, 4 minutes still left on the clock, plus the final lap, of course, and as they make their way around right now, in this case, one driver who we haven't really talked about very much since the start of this race and the restart is your race leader, and that is Chris Daines here, leading by 1.3 seconds. But as he makes his way down towards turn number 9, I think at this point flashing his lights to Mark Arrowsmith there, as Arrowsmith in a wounded car once again trying to creep along. He's trying to get the car on around. Well, that car, and you can see the damage on it, particularly that front right hand side of the car from the driver's perspective, and Arrowsmith in a major whack. Now, what exactly happened to Mark Arrowsmith is the big question. Well, he's just gradually making his way to the pit lane, and to be fair, he's done very well to avoid being in the way of everybody and staying clear. But that is a Honda that definitely needs a big patch up. Meanwhile, speaking of patching things up here are two of the rivals in the overall championship, and indeed Paul Scott right now, your P2 driver in the championship. He wants to try and keep what is Gavan Gardener behind him as they make their way into turn number 1. Scott here has got a huge amount of work to do, because Gardener, as soon as he sees an opportunity, he will go for it as they roll the way down. We run on board the gearbox here of the Next Gen Racing blue driver, Paul Scott, as they come through the chicane. Now as they roll the way on through at this time around, it is the case that Paul Scott right now looking quite smooth in those lines. Remember, it's really the initiative has to be with Gardner to find a way on through, and that will be the big challenge for him, in the fact that if he gets it right, he'll be able to stay this close, but he's still got to find a bit more time to be able to look for the move. He's only a 10th off right now as they make their way into the final hairpin, and as they roll the way through the right-hander, you can see Paul Scott defend on that inside line, parking the car on apex there to stop Gardener from being able to get a cutback run all the way down the start-finish straight as they both charge on through, and as they make their way past the start-finish line here beyond the commentary box, it is the case that we can see Gardener looking up the inside there. He's got his nose for a peek on the inside. Paul Scott gives him the space, and as they make their way down the hill through turn number 2, they're Gardener backs out sensibly, knowing that it's not going to be 2 into 1 at turn number 3 at that angle. Meanwhile, in the battle for the lead, where's the case here? Not long to go. John Higgins Jr. closing up to the back of Chris Daines as they make the way around on what is lap number 19 here. Now, Chris Daines was out front for a time, but it does seem as though over the last couple of laps that pace has started to drop away. Alternatively, Higgins Jr. has turned up the wick, and I'd like to think that Higgins Jr. at this point right now trying to deliver at his home circuits. He makes his way down through 1 and into 2. We see some connectivity issues briefly there for Chris Daines. Hopefully that's not a sign of something major to come in terms of a technical disconnect, or what we would call the equivalent of an engine failure in real-world motorsport. But meanwhile, we look from them to the battle for P8. Gardner on the outside here into turn number 1. It's going to be Paul Scott defending on the inside as they make their way into the right-hander. Both of them give one another space. They make their way down the hill. Gardner's got the inside into 2, and Paul Scott's had to back out there, not able to carry the speed through 2, being on that outside line, and Gavan Gardener's got the move done. But as we return from 1 Verano Motorsport driver to the other. It is the case that the Danishman here, Chris Danes, under pressure. He's got 2 laps to go. Well, the fact that we're not quite at the 19-minute mark here, as we're hearing that John Burnham has got his way past Paul Scott. Paul Scott's had an off track. In fact, he's off track at turn number 5 into 6. But as they make the way across that timeline here, our race leaders on the penultimate lap, it is the case that Higgins Jr. putting that pressure on. Danes gets it slightly wrong at turn number 1, has to take to the escape road there. And as they make the way through the right-hander at turn number 3, Higgins Jr. thinks about it, can't quite go for it, as we're hearing that Paul Scott's had to jump to the pits, I think for damage on the car at turn number 6. It is the case he's dropped behind Matthew Addy, but meanwhile Higgins Jr. absolutely going for it as we ride on board with the P2 driver. As he makes his way out the corner, he's got a lot of momentum. In fact, he's already looking to the outside here. Danes is going to defend to the inside as they make their way through the turn number 8 and up towards 9 they go. Now Danes, of course, can try and park the car on apex with Higgins Jr. around the outside here. If he can hook this up right, he can carry the momentum around like we saw the Civic drivers such as Lee Horn earlier. But in the end, Higgins Jr. backs off. He decides he's going to run in the tyres. We see the white flag waving there from Barney Flag, our flag man. And as they make their way across the timeline, 1 more lap to go here in race number 1 at Knockhill. And we can see Higgins Jr. right now trying to bring home a win at his home circuit versus Chris Danes, your leader, as they make their way into turn number 3. But Danes defending left, right and centre here as they make their way for the right-hander of 3. And as in the run to the chicane, there's not much time left. And Higgins Jr. does not have many more places to go for an overtake. He gets a better run through the chicane though. And as they make their way in towards turn number 6, he's going to look around the outside here. And as they roll the way on through, Jr.'s going to try and commit all the way round. He's able to stay. There's a little bit of contact between the two of them. But as they make their way up towards turn number 9 at this point, Chris Danes falls behind. Now can Higgins Jr. cover off the Audi driver into the final corner? It's going to come on down. There's a bit of contact between the two. Higgins Jr. gets his elbows out. Danes tries to do the same. And as they make their way out of the corner, well, here he comes to the line. He's going to take a home win in race number 1. It's Higgins Jr. who takes the win for HSR ahead of Chris Danes in P2. And then it will be Higgins Sr. making it a HSR P1, P3 overall. Jamie Dorey P4 in the end, not quite able to get onto the podium, and it'll be Rob McGregor P5, followed by Ben Bennyworth, your prime winner, P6 overall, ahead of Lee Horn just behind, and then we will have Gavan Gardener P8, recovering to P8 in the end, John Burnham P9 in a drag race along with Mark Sykes is a lap down, but John Burnham taking that P2 in the prime class. Mark Arrowsmith in the end will make his way on through the final driver on that lead lap. And to come across the line, he'll be coming home in P10. That's P3 in the prime class for Mark Arrowsmith. And then Matthew Addy and Mark Sykes classified at least a lap down there, P11 and P12 respectively. And the retirement of Paul Scott. But what a race in the end. And Higgins Jr. right now, you can see there with his father flashing their lights together as they made their way through turn number 8. They're on their cool down lap. But that is going to be a very, very happy family moment for the pair of them here. They came here to their home circuit to do well, and well, they have delivered in race number 1. And the question is now, can they continue that momentum in race number 2 as they peel their way into the pits? And well, Higgins Sr. didn't quite have the pace compared to Junior, but at the same time still a P3 for him, and Rob McGregor P5, and then HSR is back. If there was any question about it, they are back and they are looking strong here at Knockhill. Meanwhile, John Burnham P9, a solid race from him as well, the prime stacking with Solar Racing driver. Still plenty more points on the board, but Bennyworth once again another win. Can anybody stop Ben Bennyworth in the prime class? Well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, it is the case. Let's take you through those race results subject to any stewards' inquiries for race number 1, and here they are. It is the case after 20 minutes of racing, and John Higgins Jr. taking that win in the end by 6/10 of a second over Chris Danes from Verano Motorsport. The HSR driver beating the Danishman to the line. John Higgins Sr. completing the top 3 for HSR, both overall and in the pro class. Jamie Dorey P4, not quite the race he wanted, particularly after that contact on the opening lap with Gavan Gardener, but still a P4 recovery. That's great work from him. Rob McGregor P5 completing the top 5. 3 HSR drivers all in the top 5. And then Ben Bennyworth, our prime winner in P6, ahead of Lee Horn P7. Gavan Gardener P8 not quite able to make the moves he needed to get towards the top 5, but still that P8 start will be a valuable one for him in race number 2. John Burnham P9, the prime driver, there P2 in the prime class, and then Mark Arrowsmith completing the prime podium with that P10. Great drive from him. Paul Scott, a difficult race, P11 classified, and then Matthew Addy and Mark Sykes, P12, P13 respectively. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a brief break, and we will be back in approximately 5 or 6 minutes' time for the build-up to race number 2. Don't go anywhere, you won't want to miss it. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are back then for the build-up to race number 2 of round 6 of the Next Gen Racing Touring Car Championship, known in short as the NXTCC. And here's the case you can see from the race schedule there, times in British Summertime or UTC +1. We're currently running approximately 6 to 7 minutes behind where we should be, but in just under 4 minutes time we will be going racing for our second race of this evening. And then of course we'll have one more race after that, with race number 3 being our sprint race with the reverse grid from P6 to P12, depending on what is drawn from the lottery ball hat, but more on that in a brief moment. But in terms of what we have seen so far in race number 1, it is the case we have seen trials and tribulations. We have seen some drivers have great success and others who look to be on form, but it didn't quite work out for them. And one of those drivers being Mark Sykes, the Englishman in the 666 car, the sign of the devil and a devilish grin in the form of Mark Sykes. I can tell you that he has a wicked smile, and as the Next Gen Racing blue driver makes his way down the start-finish straight here in the Hyundai Veloster, it is the case he was looking very strong in terms of pace in the race, but got it wrong, and the exit of this corner of turn 1, rolling down the hill through turn number 2, the car snapped loose on him and went into the tyre barrier, and that was a race ender. He jumped to the pits, he came out 2 laps down, and in the end finished just outside the top 10. And as we can see from Elwood Sykes there in the YouTube chat saying Mark was giving it horns, but in return got wings. Indeed he did. He did launch into the air, but thankfully he's back in the car now, all happy and secure and ready to go racing once again. But keep your eyes out for him. I can expect that he'll be trying to come through the field as rapidly as possible. But in terms of drivers, meanwhile, who had a stellar race, well, it is the case that we did have that win from this man as he makes his way out of the pit lane. John Higgins Jr. picking up his first win of the season, unless I'm very much mistaken. And what a circuit today. It's home circuit. The HSR Racing driver there in the number 5 car, beating Chris Daines on the final lap. But to be fair, what we did get to see in that first race is the nature of the cars in the race. With our Hyundai Elantra, we talked about it being strong here, and well, Higgins Jr. able to roll that car over the curves, particularly the chicane. This is the curves were non-existent compared to the fact that Chris Daines indeed in the Audi, all our Audi drivers having to be quite aware of those curves, and even our Honda drivers and also our Veloster driver having to take those curves more sensitively compared to the Elantra. And right now Higgins will be on pole for race number 2, of course, and will he be able to pull off back-to-back wins here at his home circuit? He'll be hoping this can, because it will really revive his championship momentum, and that's something key as he makes his way down the start-finish straight. But of course, other drivers, Paul Scott not having a good race 1, not quite the way he wanted it to work out, and the real question is, can anybody hold a candle to Ben Bennyworth, who just seems to be in a world of his own as we see him parked up there in the pit lane. It is the case, can't quite get the camera angle we'd like on Ben Bennyworth, but he is parked in there, and as he waits to go, it is the case the Prime Stacker with Solo Racing driver absolutely chomping and itching at the bit to go racing once again. That stellar win in the Prime class in race number 1, if he can back it up with at least another win, he'll be well on his way to victory in the championship overall. We've still got plenty of rounds to go, but he's definitely right now setting a standard that nobody else in the Prime class seems to be able to live up to. Although as John Burnham makes his way around through turn 4 and into 5-6, he'll be hoping he could make a difference there and rectify that in due course. And Burnham, to be fair, having a good race in race number 1, battling 4th position, and he'll be looking to continue that trend in race number 2. But as he makes his way on through, Lee Horn, who right now as he makes his way around, not the race he wanted in race number 1 either. An early instant, seeing him lose out on lap number 1, getting it wrong at turn number 4, putting a wheel on the grass on the outside, and as he made his way through turn 4, carried a bit too much momentum through this corner in particular before the chicane, and he'll be looking to try and right the wrongs of race 1 in race number 2, and of course get himself right into contention for that potential reverse grid pole, which could be anywhere from being reversed from P6 to P12. But the question is, of course, with a field here of 13 drivers, nobody wants to finish P13 because you are guaranteed to start at the back regardless. If you can imagine that we were to draw P12 out of the hat, or really our China Bowl, it is the case that our dessert bowl, it'd be one of those cases whereby starting P13 would be feeling very painful for the driver in front of you, would be getting that pole position. But as Lee Horn makes his way into the pits, we end the warm-up session. It's now time to go racing once again. But as all our drivers make their way to the grid, let's take you through that grid for race number 2, and here it is. John Higgins Jr. lines up on pole after his win in race number 1 for Team HSR, joined by Verano Motorsports' Chris Daines on the front row. Behind them, John Higgins Sr. from HSR, being joined by Jamie Dorey from Next Gen Racing Orange. Ron McGregor starts P5 for HSR, ahead of Ben Bennyworth, our Pro-Am winner in race number 1 and started P6. Lee Horn and Gavan Gardener on row number 4, P7, P8 respectively. John Burnham and Mark Harris with the 2 Pro-Ams on row 5, P9, P10. Paul Scott and Matthew Addy share row number 6, P11, P12. And then last but not least, Mark Sykes started P13 and the one to make all the ground in race number 2. But to be fair, I wouldn't put it past him to go charging early on this race. Keep your eyes out for Mark Sykes. He may be starting at the back, but I doubt he's going to be finishing at the back come the finish. But as we are waiting now for our drivers to get themselves all set here, just waiting for 1 or 2 drivers to make their way onto the grid, and when they are done, it'll be the case we get the green lights. In fact, we've got a minute to go. In fact, less than that, it's time for the lights. One red light, 2 red lights, 3 red lights, 4 red lights, 5 red lights. And it's the lights out, and away we go here for race number 2 as John Higgins Jr. gets a good start here, but Chris Daines gets an absolute flyer of a start like in race number 1, and he jumps into the lead immediately, does Chris Daines. Meanwhile, Dorey trying to go around the outside there. Higgins Sr.'s having some connectivity issues, and as they make the way on down the hill, it is the case. We see a bit further back there, a scattering, and Mark Arrowsmith gains a place at the expense of John Burnham as they come on through. Now they make the way into the very tricky turn 4, rather the first time of cold tyres, but everybody this time surviving the run to the chicane, and through the chicane they emerge. Meanwhile, Chris Daines here going to hold off John Higgins Jr., who immediately is going on the offensive here. Higgins Jr. is wasting no time in coming back at Chris Daines, but what a launch. Meanwhile, Robert McGregor off circuit there and losing place. He drops down to P8, dropping 3 places at the start of this race. But meanwhile, JB Dorey trying to go on the offensive with the Honda, turning up the wick very early on, as we see there. Higgins Jr. going defensive. Chris Daines overcooks it into the corner, and it's the case. Oh, goodness me, now Higgins Sr. has come out of nowhere in all of this. Now I'm wondering when there's been contact there that we haven't seen, given Higgins Sr.'s car is phasing in and out of existence. But Higgins Sr. is your leader after 1 lap here. Well, that is absolutely phenomenal. But as they make the way on down the hill, it is the case that John Higgins Jr. P2, Chris Daines P3, Jamie Dorey P4, Ben Bennyworth P5, and Ben Bennyworth getting an absolutely stellar start to his race as Lee Horn has come into the pits for a drive-through penalty. I believe he may have jumped the start. He's had a very short run through the pit lane. And then P6, we've got John Burnham, followed by Mark Arrowsmith here, and the primes are all feisty here as they make the way out towards turn at number 7. But as they make the way through the right-hander right now, Arrowsmith all over the back of Burnham, but Burnham holding firm here as they make the way down through the kink of 8. Meanwhile, Gavan Gardener trying to look up the inside, or at least one of them, if not more, as we're hearing that Jamie Dorey battling with Chris Daines further up the road. But we focus here on that battle for P6, and you can see here Arrowsmith under pressure from Matthew Addy, and watch out for Matthew Addy. We believe he has got the pace to potentially be in the top 5, if not in the podium, given how fast he was in race number 1 before it all went wrong. And right now, Addy's going to try and go around the outside of Arrowsmith into 1 here, as they make the way across the line, and down they go into the braking zone. And as they do, Matthew Addy gets it hooked up the rear, slides loose, and Addy controls it there just about. My goodness, Matthew Addy right on the threshold of losing it completely, but he gains P7, and with that, it's not catch of the season. I don't know what is right now, and it is the case, if he hasn't considered playing cricket and fielding, he might want to consider doing so. With that car control there, he is definitely a catcher, and as he makes his way through turn number 7, it is the case that NXTGEN Racing green driver definitely showed he is deft with cat-like reflexes. Meanwhile, up front, we can see that John Higgins Jr. is now into the lead. He has got past Father Higgins Sr. as they make the way for the right-hander at turn number 9. They make the way onto another lap here as we reload our overlay, so you can see the circuit map at the top right corner of your screen. As they charge on through, it is the case that right now the only driver out of the hunt of the main packs is Lee Horn after that drive-through penalty for the jump start. Meanwhile, battling for P9, P8 right now is Gavan Gardener versus Mark Arrowsmith. It's Gardener on the inside here for P8 versus Arrowsmith, who tries to defend. Arrowsmith will be hoping to get out as they make contact there, but the Audi by comparison looks like an absolute Goliath in terms of the weight distribution, and as they make the way through turn number 3, well, Gardener goes a bit deep. Arrowsmith comes back at him here. Meanwhile, Rob McGregor, who's lost all sorts of places since the start of this race, he's caught up in this mixture right now as they make the way through turns 5 and 6. But as they roll the way through the right-hander here, we say hello to Motorsport Magpie there, who couldn't make the race. It's David Whitehouse, which unfortunately couldn't make it, David. We completely understand though, and we're happy to see you tuning in. I hope you're doing well, good sir, and look forward to seeing you out on the circuit. So to enjoy all the racing action here, as meanwhile Rob McGregor tries to go up the inside versus Gavan Gardener into the final corner, and there's a bit more contact between them, and Gardner's turned slightly there. Meanwhile, Mark Sykes trying to go up the inside of Paul Scott. He's not quite able to find the move right now as they make the way to the timeline and go onto another lap. Onto lap number 5 they go, and as they charge on through, meanwhile up front, it is the case that Higgins Sr. here trying to hold Jamie Dorey at bay as they make the way through turn 3 into 4, but as they roll the way down through 4 and up into the chicane 5, 6, I think here HSR are trying to play a bit of a rear guard manoeuvre with Higgins Sr. in the fact that he is gradually letting his son Higgins Jr. pull away, and to be fair, I think Higgins Sr., we know how strong his defensive craft is, so this might be a very wise move. It essentially opens the field up, it gives them a huge opportunity for 1-2 as they make the way onto the end of this lap. But as they make the way up towards turn at number 9 right now, we look from them to the midfield battle here for P8, and Rob McGregor, well, he is ahead of Gavan Gardener, but for how long before Gardener tries to come back? But more importantly for McGregor, can he get the move for P8 on the inside, as we see Gardener taking a peek all the way to the inside versus the pair of them. He can't quite find it, has to back out. Meanwhile, Aerosmith runs onto the grass. He rejoins there, but Gardener has to give him the space. They make the way down the start finish line and onwards to another lap. But Rob McGregor now up into that P8 position. Meanwhile, Gardener trying to make the move as they head into turn number 1, and as they do, Gardener up the inside here. He gets it done, or does he, as Aerosmith comes back into 2, and Gardener seals the deal. As meanwhile, Mark Sykes gets it wrong in the rear of the picture there, but brings the car back to circuit, but not without losing the rear end slightly. Meanwhile, in the battle for P6, John Burnham here being passed by Matthew Addy into turn number 7 here. Burnham not fighting this one too hard. I think focusing more about Matthew Addy being able to draw him up towards Ben Bennyworth, who is the next driver up the road from the pair of them, as Rob McGregor almost loses the rear end there, coming out of turn number 7. But as they make the way in towards the final hairpin, it is the case. Rolling the way on in, we do have Chris Daines, who has found his way past Ben Bennyworth. And for those wondering how it happened, this is how it happened. It was only moments ago, and of course Bennyworth ahead of Chris Daines early on in the race, but Daines carrying the momentum through 2 and into 3, and Bennyworth then not defending too hard, and I think respecting the fact that he's battling with the pro drivers here and really just wants to focus on his own championship. But as they make the way on around, we return to those live pictures, and here is Higgins Senior holding Jamie Dorey at bay as we ride on board with the overall and the pro championship leader. Now, of course, at this point, there'll be a degree of frustration potentially for Jamie Dorey, because you can see the race leader of Higgins Jr. break away, but Higgins Sr. makes a mistake there coming out to turn number 7 as they make the way for the kink of 8 here. Side by side they run, and as they head into the braking zone here for turn number 9, well, can Dorey hang it all the way around the outside? We know the Civic goes incredibly strong out of this final corner, and as they make the way out of it, it is the case Dorey holds around the outside there. You can see that Higgins Sr. trying to keep his foot in here and keep the nose in the run to turn number 1. I think Dorey here can afford to outbrake his rival, or can he, as they make the way into the apex? No, they're still side by side as they head down. There's contact there with Higgins Senior. Senior has turned slightly, but in this case he's able to bring the car together, and I think there was always going to be a bit of elbow contact there between the two drivers, given the fact that Dorey really wants to get on through, and Higgins Senior trying to make it as difficult as possible, but Jamie Dorey gets it done, and now can Chris Daines follow suit here to get himself into the contention of a podium position as they make their way into turn number 7. Close battle between these guys on circuit. Chris Daines at this point, I think, will be waiting his turn and thinking about how he can make his way on through in the 111 machine as they make the way down towards turn number 9. Meanwhile, further down the order, I can tell you that Paul Scott has made his way up into P10 ahead of Mark Aerosmith, who's now P11, but focusing here on the battle for P3. Daines very close to the back of Higgins Senior as they make the way across the timeline here. No safety cars since the start of this race. We've had all racing so far. The first 7 minutes have been completely filled with racing action. That's what we love to see, of course, and right now our drivers are reveling in it. But of course, with the race being the full 20 minutes, we would presume that does mean that tyre wear could become a factor, and the one car that suffers most on tyre wear is the Hyundai Elantra, and we'll have to wait and see how that plays out in the long duration. Conversely, it is the case that the Honda in particular has the best tyre preservation rate, and the Audi is somewhere in between as I try to make the way on around this lap. But further back, we see here that John Burnham, running in P7, has got Rob McGregor for company as we ride on board the gearbox of the Pro-Am driver. And as they make the way into turn 7 at this point, Rob McGregor, of course, trying to get his way back up the order. He started P5, keep in mind with McGregor, and here he's got a lot of momentum as they make the way to the run to turn number 9. And as they do, it's going to be a battle on the brakes. So you can see those brakes at the rear of that Elantra already glowing red hot here. That's how much bias they're running towards the rear of that car in terms of the brake bias in order to get the rear to lift and come round. And as they make the way on towards another lap, Burnham being passed there, and I think Gavan Gardener's not moving too far away from trying to make a move himself, as right now the Renault Motorsport driver here really trying to regain his starting position and then gain more ground. This race is not working out for Gardener by any means as he makes his way into turn number 3. In the fact he's lost a place, and now the leaders are already off into the distance already, what would mean 12 seconds off of the race leader, and his target would be make sure he gets P6, so that he's got a guarantee been in that reverse grid and potentially that reverse grid pole. But as he makes his way into turn number 7 here, John Burnham proving a little bit defensive, and as they make the way out to the corner, Burnham gets it a bit wrong there coming out to turn 7, has to settle the car on the inside line, and I think in the end letting Gavan Gardener go and gaining that P8 position as they make the way to the end of this lap. But as they do, the battles are calming down for a brief moment here. It gives us a bit of a breather from all the racing action, but there's still plenty more to come, I can assure you of that. And behind we see Paul Scott, they're running in P10 right now. Paul Scott gaining 1 place since the start of this race. Of course, race number 1 not really working out for Paul Scott with that jump to pits towards the end. But but this time as he continues to press his way on around here, it is the case he'll be looking to try and pass John Burnham, and right now in terms of lap time, he is lapping a little bit faster than Burnham on that last lap, in fact taking half a second out of Burnham, albeit with Burnham's mistake at turn number 7, and as he makes his way on around this time, if Paul Scott can continue this momentum of closure, it is the case he'll be there with about 5 minutes to spare. But as he rolls his way around, we look from him to P3 driver here, John Higgins Sr., and right now under pressure from Chris Daines behind as they make their way out of the final corner underneath our blimp camera, which follows them all the way in the run up towards turn number 1. Now as they make the way, of course, all the way in the long charge up towards 1 at a distance here, gives you a feel for that, the length of that start-finish straight, and also how as they make the way down the hill. It almost looks flat here, but of course we've seen from different camera angles how it's not a flat run through turns 1 through to 3, but Daines definitely closing on up, and as they make the way through 3 and up towards the chicane they go, Chris Daines definitely now starting to feel a bit more comfortable. A slow start for the Audi, but we do know that the Audi takes a lot of time to get up to pace compared to its peers. It takes about 5 to 6 laps, the best part of 7 minutes at some circuits to be able to get that momentum. And as he makes his way up through the King of 8 right now, Chris Daines, I think, will be feeling as though he's in the zone, but he won't want to drop it at any point. To be fair, Chris Daines does not make mistakes. He's pinpoint precise and speed of precision. A bit of contact there with Higgins Senior, but it is the case the door was left open, and Chris Daines now starting to have an itch, and that itch is he wants a P3, not a P4, and he takes a look up the inside as meanwhile Higgins Jr. sets the fastest lap of the race, a 51.879, the only driver to hit a 51 so far in race conditions, as Daines takes a huge amount of apex curve there. All 4 wheels coming off the ground for a brief moment. The Verona Motorsport driver, he's going some, but he's going to be careful, because at the end of the day, this is motor racing, not aircraft racing, and it is the case if he tries to fly like that, he may find himself coming unstuck a little bit later on. But Chris Daines there taking a lot of apex curve and getting air as a result of it. But meanwhile, Higgins Senior, they're getting a bit wrong coming out to turn number 7, and as he makes his way for the King of 8, I think he'll feel safe this time around, given the fact that Daines is too far back to capitalise, but that gap is looking as though it's not going anywhere but staying close as they make the way to the end of this lap, the end of lap number 13. Still got plenty of laps to go here with what is 8.5 minutes of racing still on the clock, plus that final lap. And as they make the way onto another lap here, it is one of those cases whereby Chris Daines right now, he's definitely got the pace there, and he's got the boldness. He's just got to synchronise the two together, as it is the case that every so often he just seems to overstep the mark on that turn 1 curve in particular, and it unsettles the car a bit too much. As he makes his way on down and around at this point, we can see that the difference in lines as well, where it is the case that Higgins Senior able to take a much straighter line over the curve of turn number 5, and in doing so it's really giving him the run. And look at the gap he opens through turns 4, 5, 6 and 7. Those 4 corners alone, he opens up so much of a gap, and then it is the case that Chris Daines has to close it back up, and that really goes to show you what we're talking about earlier, the Elantra just able to take those curves absolutely mercilessly by comparison with its peers. But as they make the way on through, we look to Matthew Addy here, who right now the pro driver in P6, effectively P5 in the pro class. He wants to go after Ben Bennyworth, who's your pro and leader in P5, in order to get another overall position. As they make the way across the timeline, I look to my timing screens, and it is the case that Jamie Dorey has just set the fastest lap of the race, a new fastest lap of a 51.86, the best part of what is 2/10 faster than the best personal of Higgins Jr. at 51.88. So Jamie Dorey is trying to fly, and he is gradually inching himself closer to Higgins Jr. But meanwhile, we look here to Higgins Senior, who's had a poor run coming out to turn number 7, and Chris Daines very close here as we ride on board with the Audi Sport Customer Racing driver from Verona Motorsport. And as they make the way into turn number 9, we can see he's going for the cutback here, but Higgins Senior knows what's coming. He parks on apex there, and right now Chris Daines, he's got so much pace at his fingertips, I think he would argue, but he's got to find a way to get on through and unleash it as they make the way across that timeline. 7 minutes on the clock, and as they make the way into turn number 1, you can see really having to fight at the steering wheel here to keep the car pointing enough in the straight line, but also turning on in. But as they do, Higgins Senior definitely now starting to have to come off that racing line slightly, having to go defensive here to try and cut Chris Daines' momentum. And as they make the way through turns 5 and 6, you can see both are clattering over those curves as much as possible. And I think Chris Daines now recognising that Higgins Senior not quite as comfortable as he might like to be, and he needs to keep tapping into that. He needs to make the HSR driver more prone to errors. He needs to keep right on his neck as they make the way all the way up to turn number 9 here. Otherwise, Higgins City will just get himself more composed. We see Danes there, much like at Zandvoort, taking a very aggressive approach under braking, almost losing the rear of the car, but not able to outbrake his rival as they make the way across the timeline. But look at this, Higgins Senior knows what's coming. He brings it to the inside, he makes Danes have to commit to the outside, but meanwhile Danes not falling for it and instead waiting his turn as they make the way down the hill, and as they roll the way on down here from the top point of the circuit to the lowest point. It is the case that Danes right now slithering all over the back, but no way on through as they come through 4 and up into 5 and 6. But you can see that in that dirty air, in the draft, the car's not quite as stable as he'd like it to be, and he has to back off for a brief moment. But as they make the way into 7 here, Higgins Senior definitely looking uncomfortable, and that Elantra not looking as fast as it was previously. And I wonder if that tyre wear is now starting to pick up as well, as we are almost at the final 5 minutes of this race plus that final lap, and will the Elantra will start to show that tyre wear as they make the way through the final quarter. Danes this time gets a nice cut back there. Higgins Senior overcooks it on the brakes and goes a bit too deep. Now can Danes convert this into a move into turn 1 as they make the way across the start finish line, as they make the way up into top gear? It is the case that Chris Day is able to get his nose slightly on the inside, but he's just not able to force that door open, and Higgins Senior able to close the door once again. Meanwhile, a bit further back, Rob McGregor, with Matthew Addy not able to find his way past Ben Bennyworth, he's been closed up to. Right now, McGregor absolutely flying compared to Addy, and as they make the way through turn 3 and down towards 4, 5 and 6 they come. Behind, Gavan Gardener also taking a look at this. We see Addy stepping out of line, coming from the chicane, and meanwhile Rob McGregor's going to look up the inside here into turn number 7, and as they roll the way on in, McGregor's going to fully commit. There's a bit of a rub between the two of them, but as they make the way on out, Addy keeps the position for the time being, but very close between the pair as they head on down towards turn number 9. It's all kicking off here in the battle for P6, and Addy having to try and hold firm. Meanwhile, the battle for P3, Higgins Senior under pressure, and this time Chris Danes alongside as they head across the timeline. Danes is ahead by a nose as they make the way down into 1, but of course it's a right-hander, and that means Higgins Senior on the inside here. He can force Danes to have to take a very tricky line, but Danes stays on the inside. They're side by side into turn number 3. Neither driver backing out. There's more contact between them, but in the end he has to back out as Chris Danes, as it is the case that it tapers away at turn number 3, and Higgins Senior holds the position, but he's definitely under huge pressure right now. Higgins City, he goes defensive up into 7. This is the battle for the final spot on the podium. They make the way through turn number 7. Higgins City drifts wide. Danes goes onto the gravel there, giving the space after he saw his rival in his right mirror. Oh, and they're coming together. The two drivers make contact there. Well, there's definitely elbows out, and well, I think both of them would argue that they should have given one other more room, but it is the case that Chris Danes is ahead. Meanwhile, further back, Ben Bennyworth battling for the final spot in the top 5. Matthew Addy's going to try and go around the outside here, but he overcooks it under braking. He goes a bit deep, and as a result now has to back out, but in return Rob McGregor here waits and seizes an opportunity as they make the way down the start finish straight here. 3 minutes to go, and Rob McGregor looking to try and take P6. And as they come into turn 1, McGregor on the inside as they roll the way down. He gets the move done, or does he? There's a bit of contact there with Addy, but Addy has to tuck back in, and Rob McGregor, well, it is the case that this race did not start out the way he wanted it to, but he's almost recovered all the place he lost. He's now up into P6, and he's going to try and gain one more versus Ben Bennyworth, as behind it is the case that Matthew Addy, after a brilliant initial run to gain places, he's now started to run out a little bit of steam here, it would seem, for the NXTGEN Racing green driver, and well, can he hold on to P7 versus Gavan Gardener behind, as we're hearing that Mark Arrowsmith, meanwhile, trying to find his way past Paul Scott here in the very late stages in the battle to be the last driver inside the top 10, and they're effectively battling for the final step of the prime podium, but as they make the way down for the kink of 8 and up towards the final corner here. Paul Scott going defensive initially, knowing that Mark Arrowsmith is there, and he's going to hold that line, and Arrowsmith making Paul Scott to commit to a very defensive line, but not able to seize on it as they make the way out of the final corner and onwards towards what for them will be 3 laps to go. But as they come across that timing line here, it is the case we look from them to Ben Bennyworth, and we ride on board the gearbox of Bennyworth as he makes his way from 4 and up into 5, 6 as he comes through the chicane. You can see they're not able to take the speed he would like. In fact, Rob McGregor gets the run now up into turn number 7, but he's not able to go fully to the inside, and Bennyworth struggling at this point. The car's just not giving him the confidence that he would like, and well, McGregor will be trying to capitalise on this, but he's not able to find the space at the moment. But to be fair, he's got time. He's still got 2 more laps after this one, and this time McGregor's going to look around the outside. Bennyworth will need to park it on the inside there to prevent any form of cutback. He does so successfully as they make the way out to the corner, and Gavan Gardener are right back into this battle for P5 as they make the way across the timeline. But look at this, where Gregor's got the momentum. They make the way out towards turn one. He's going to look around the outside into the right-hander. But as they do there, it's the case that McGregor backs out, really trying to get Bennyworth to overextend the corner. No such mistake being made there. But as they make the way down through the right-hander here at turn number 3, Bennyworth holds on once again for the time being. Meanwhile, at the back of this group, Gavan Gardener here rolling behind the trio in front. And as the 4 tries to make the way through the chicane here, absolutely classic style racing here from the quadruple group. And as they roll the way on through, it is the case Gardner trying to stay there, but he goes to the ground much like McGregor. That shows you how hard they're pushing as the race leader has gone onto the final lap with an advantage of 1.3 seconds over Jamie Dorey. That's Higgins Jr. who's gone onto the final lap as they roll the way into the final corner here, and then it will be the final lap coming up for these guys. Garner getting close to the back of Matthew Addy, but no way through at this point in time. He has to wait, watch, and attempt a move into turn number 1, but as he makes his way across the line here, will he be able to go for it? No, he's too far away. He has to back off. As they make the way on down the hill here, Bennyworth doing a stellar job of holding position. But speaking of holding position, we must look to our race leader here for after making his way back past Chris Daines early on in the race. It is the case he's held on to lead all the way through, and as he makes his way out of the final corner here, it's going to be 2 out of 2 for John Higgins Jr. as the HSR driver comes to the line and takes the checker flag. The win overall, plus in the Pro class, Jamie Dorey P2, and then it will be Chris Daines who takes the final spot on the podium overall in the Pro class here, having to battle his way past Higgins Sr. as he crosses the line. Higgins Sr. P4, and then it will be Ben Bennyworth in a drag race to the line who holds on to take a top 5 finish in P5 overall, but more importantly for him, another win in the Pro class. Rob McGregor P6 just ahead of Matthew Addy, Gavan Gardener P8, and then we have John Burnham here who held off Paul Scott to the finish. P9, the second place in the Pro-Am class, ahead of Paul Scott P10, completing the Pro-Am podium. Mark Harris with P11, and then we will have Lee Horn crossing the line P12, and then last but not least, a difficult race for Mark Sykes, but P13, that's P5 in the Pro-Am class there as he comes on through. But as he makes his way on down and around at this point with all the results in, let's show you those results subject to any steward's inquiries. Well, it is the case that after another 20 minutes of racing, John Higgins Jr. making it 2 out of 2 here at his home circuit in County Fife, Scotland, with that win by 1 second over Jamie Dorey. Dorey putting in a strong performance, gaining 2 places at the start of the race, but not enough to go the full distance. Chris Daines P3 and then completing the podium, but there might be a little bit of a question mark about that late contact between Chris Daines and John Higgins Sr. Again, we're not coming down on either side. I think both drivers, they're really getting their elbows out, but Daines coming ahead of Higgins Sr. in that P3. Higgins Sr. just missing out on the podium with Ben Bennyworth there taking P5 and the Pro-Am win. Rob McGregor P6, a good recovery drive from Rob McGregor to recover 4 of the 5 places he lost at the start of the race. Matthew Addy P7, Gavan Gardener P8, John Burnham P9 and Paul Scott P10, with Burnham and Scott completing the Pro-Am podium behind Bennyworth, and then Mark Harris Smith, Lee Horn and Mark Sykes completing the standings. Out of our 13 drivers to start, all 13 finished, and in the end it is the case we've got one more race to go. And speaking of that final race to go, you know what time it is, ladies and gentlemen. It is time for the reverse grid draw. So as we cut to the commentary booth here, it is the case we are back once again with the classic NXTCC China Bowl here, the dessert bowl. And in this bowl, for those who are uninitiated, you can see there are multiple cut-up sticky notes here, whereby it is the case we have P6 through to P12 on these sticky notes in equal proportion. We are going to shuffle them, and once we've shuffled them, we will close our eyes and make the draw for the purposes of Knockhill today, and who is going to be on pole position for race number 3. Well, that's the shuffle done. I'll close my eyes and let's make the draw. If we can find one, and there we go. And our reverse grid pole is... well, it's not the number everybody would have wanted. It is number 6. It is the case the number 6 strikes again, and it will be Rob McGregor who takes pole position for the purposes of race number 3. And, well, I'll be passing that on to the stewards shortly, but it is the case. Can the HSR driver who will be starting on pole make it a win at his home circuit, or will we see Higgins Jr., his teammate, come charging on through the field? All that and more in a few minutes' time. We'll be back in about 5 to 6 minutes for the build up to race number 3. Don't go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. You won't want to miss this. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are back then for race number 3 of round 6 of the NXTCC, hosted here today in County Fife, Scotland, at the Knockhill Racing Circuit. And of course, we are seeing the traditional forward international layout made up of 9 corners here. And what an opening 2 races it has been. Race number 1, of course, interrupted by an early safety car, but we still did have the best part of 15 minutes of racing. And throughout all of that, in the end, we saw a brilliant showdown right at the end of race 1 between John Higgins Jr. and Chris Daines in the Pro class, with Higgins Jr. getting the upper hand for HSR versus the Runner Motorsport driver to take the win. In race number 2, we saw Higgins Jr. make it 2 wins out of 2, breaking away, whilst Higgins Sr. acted as a rear guard for a brief while, keeping the rest of the pursuing pack at bay. But when Jamie Dorey found his way on through, he closed the gap down from what was 3 seconds to 1 second, but it wasn't enough in the end to be able to close the gap and prevent a back-to-back win for the HSR driver. Meanwhile, Chris Daines and Higgins Sr. had a brilliant battle, saw quite a few elbows come out in the end. It did get a bit aggressive, but Chris Daines able to beat what was Higgins Sr. to the post for the final spot on that podium. And meanwhile, in the Pro-Am class, it has been the Ben Bennyworth show for races 1 and 2. He's been unstoppable, and can he make it 3 out of 3, knowing the fact that he'll be starting up there towards the front of the field with his rivals behind, and with the reverse grid being only what is the top 6, and it does seem as though that number 6 has appeared more times than any other in the reverse grid draw this season. 6 and the 9 is the case, both of them there. They can be mistaken for being the wrong way and the right way up, but it is the case we made sure to take measures not for that to happen. But it is the case that P6 has struck once again, and whilst many a driver may have been hoping, what, with only 13 drivers in attendance, that it would have been P12 that would have been the reverse grid pole. Of course, then our P13 driver in race number 2 missing out. It's the case it wasn't to be, and we do have to wonder whether the curse of P6 will end with regards to our reverse grid live draw. I can assure you, though, it is completely impartial. There's an equal number in there, but that is just the way Lady Luck has decided to go for this season so far. But as we look to the chat there, we can tell that you guys and girls are tuning in, whether it's on YouTube, Twitch or Facebook, you're all enjoying it. And just to give you a reminder, it is the case that you can tune in to weekly sim racing broadcasts by NXTGEN Racing on both YouTube and Facebook. And meanwhile, if you're also looking for broadcasts by myself as your host and commentator, you can go to Twitch TV and search for TX141. But more importantly, of course, here at NXTGEN, we like to put on a weekly show, whether it's in the touring car racing class or alternatively in the upcoming GT3 Championship on iRacing as well. That's all kicking off in the near future, and it is the case that we've got another season of fantastic racing action. But coming back here right and now to the remainder of this final warm-up session, we do see there it is the case that Elwin Sykes enjoyed the racing and also enjoyed to see the reverse draw. And thank you for the compliment there, Elwin. It is indeed great to be back in the commentary booth and being able to do that live draw for everyone. And Katie Eames there in the Facebook chat saying, we're hoping for a P12 at a reverse grid, but when the P6 was drawn, saying, well, we've seen that one before. I'm sure it is the case, as we say. That number 6 does seem to be quite prevalent, but it is the case. All 7 position numbers there from P6 through to P12, all having an equal opportunity in that bowl. There's 3 of them each in there, and it is the case we return them to the deck, or we return them to the bowl each time they're drawn, so that way it's always even Stevens. We may mix that up for the purposes of Season 2, and I'm sure you all agree with me, with the racing action we've had so far, we'll definitely be looking at a Season 2 coming back for the NXTGEN Touring Car Championship. Whether it's at the end of 2022 or in 2023, we'll have to wait and see, but the key point is, whilst this is an inaugural season, by default, it has absolutely delivered round after round. And we're only just into the second half of the season. We're not at the edge yet. We've still got plenty of racing to go. And, well, speaking of plenty of racing to go, can this man, Higgins Sr., potentially find his way back onto the podium come the end of this race? Given the fact he'll be starting in P3, it will be an opportunity. And also, will it be the case that Rob McGregor, who'll be starting on pole for the purposes of race number 3, can he make it a HSR win in each race, albeit he'll be taking the win this time rather than his teammate of Higgins Jr. All that and more we will be finding out very shortly. And as we look further afield, it is the case that Chris Daines, he's not picked up a win here today, and he'll be itching to try and pick up a win. He'll be starting in P4 on the grid, and you can imagine he'll be trying to make a very quick launch, given he has launched that Audi off the grid faster than anybody else at the start of the race. We saw that in races 1 and 2, and can he make it another brilliant launch and gain enough places in the run to turn number 1? As we see there, Daines and Dorey battling out a little bit in this final warm-up session, and now the checker flag is out, and we'll be going racing, or over to the grid at least, very shortly. as the grid is now being set. Let's take you through that grid order as they stand for race number 3. It is the case that with reverse grid pole, Rob McGregor lines up P1 on the front row for HSR with Ben Bennyworth, the Prime driver there, your winner in 2 out of 2 tonight. It is the case the Prime stacking with Solar Racing driver starts P2, and can he pull off a steal there on the overall podium? John Higgins Sr. starts P3 on our second row with Chris Daines alongside him. The Rhino Motorsport driver going toe-to-toe with his rival once again from race 2. Jamie Dorey and John Higgins Jr. line up on the third row, the Next Gen Racing Orange driver, head of the double winner from HSR. And then we have Matthew Addy for Next Gen Racing Green, joined by Gavan Gardener from Rhino Motorsport on row number 4. And then behind them we have John Burnham, our next Prime driver, starting P9 on the 5th row, with Paul Scott alongside him starting P10. On the 6th row, Mark Arrowsmith and Lee Horn start together, the Prime ahead of the Pro for Crest Motorsport with Pebbles, and then Next Gen Racing Green. And then last but not least, Mark Sykes starts P13. Can he have better fortunes this time around? Well, that's the grid, and now we're ready to go racing. And it's lights out and away we go for race number 3 here as Rob McGregor gets a good start, but watch out for Higgins Sr. behind as he goes defensive immediately versus Chris Daines. But Daines once again charging on a round here, and well, Ben Bennyworth's got a good start, and Daines gains the run into turn 1. There's elbows out there between himself and Rob McGregor. He's trying to get to P2, but in the end is forced a little bit wide there at turn number 3. And as they coming out of the corner, Jamie Dorey in contact with Daines. Well, this is going to get a little bit messier as they come on through, but then as Lee Horn gets it wrong in the rear of the picture, and Matthew Addy's pushed wide a little bit, and we can see a flash of lights there from Chris Daines. He's not happy about the way he was handled by what's Rob McGregor, but Lee Horn, the only driver, oh goodness me, I was about to say the only driver to be in an instant on the opening lap, that's cost him dearly, but Paul Scott has been turned out of turn number 7. We'll take a look back at that very shortly, but Ben Bennyworth getting the start that everybody dreamed of and leading this race as he comes to the end of lap number 1. But as he makes his way on out here, is the case we don't have the track map up at the moment, but I do believe the safety car is out on circuit. Indeed it is, and that is the race. It pulls for a brief while as all of our drivers race their way to the start finish line to pick up the safety car, but after 1 lap where it's all kicked off again, and it is the case that Ben Bennyworth, leader after a lap ahead of John Higgins Sr., Rob McGregor P3 after having to really get his elbows out versus Chris Daines, Jamie Dorey P4. Well, Gavan Gardener P5, John Higgins Jr. P6, Mark Arrowsmith P7, John Burnham P8, Mark Sykes P9. Mark Sykes getting 4 places at the start of this race. Chris Daines in P10, he's made his way out the pits, he's had the repair work done to the car, quick repair. Matthew Addy P11, and then Paul Scott right now being heavily worked on the pits, having been towed to the pits, much like Lee Horn. But what exactly happened to the two of them? Well, we start off with what happened to Lee Horn very shortly, but first we do take a look back at the battle between Chris Daines and Rob McGregor, as that was an absolute thriller. As they made the way on down here. This was in the second half, and this is where it all went wrong as they came on through. And Will Daines there in the contact with Jamie Dorey had to pick the car back up and recover off circuit, flashing his lights in fury there at what happened. Meanwhile, we go all the way back to the start and off the line, and well, this is the perspective from Chris Daines. Now you see that Higgins Sr. pulls over, but as he makes his way down the hill here, it's the case that Rob McGregor's on his right. Now coming to the corner, you think he got it done, but then there was a massive knock on the side, and Daines tried to stay in there, but Rob McGregor going as defensive as possible and squeezing Daines out there onto the gravel. Well, I think there's elbows out, and there's a bit more as there's the whack from Jamie Dorey, and that's how it all played out. But I don't think the shots will look favourably on that one. But taking a look at what happened to Lee Horn, meanwhile, as the case coming out of the corner, as turn 4 struck once again. It has, he's just gone a little bit deep at turn 4 from cold tyres, and the car has spun here off the circuit into the wall. And meanwhile, what happened to Matthew Addy? Well, he was off at turn 6, rejoined, and as he rejoined into the corner, contact there with Paul Scott, turned Paul Scott across the front of him as Chris Daines was recovering as well with a damaged car. And well, I think Matthew Addy there not meaning to tap Paul Scott, but it all went so horribly wrong for the pair of them. But we return to the live pictures, and those are all of your instants on the opening lap. And right now, as our drivers make the way on around, it is the case, the safety car still on out. We do have Paul Scott, who right now is making his way past the field. He's been let through, so he's going to be able to rejoin on the lead lap here for the final race. And we've got Lee Horn making his way around. He's at turns 5 and 6 right now as the lead group of drivers here going through the final corner. I suspect the safety car will be out for 1 more lap, and then it will be releasing the drivers once again. And well, that will mean we'll still have about 15 minutes of racing, or just under that, plus the final lap as our driver's coming around here. But Ben Bennyworth at this point, I mean, if you're in Ben Bennyworth's shoes right now, you've got to feel as though this is a huge opportunity. He has got Elantris behind him in the form of Higgins Sr. and also Rob McGregor. And we know that Elantra is very fast on its own one-lap pace, but if Bennyworth can pull this off, it would be a huge result for the Pro-Am driver here and really set him up beautifully in the overall championship standings, and also be an accolade that he can take on home in terms of being a Pro-Am winner overall, not just within class. But as he makes his way around Lehorn, flying around, and we have still got Paul Scott making his way up towards that final hairpin. He's for it at the moment. We may have an additional lap behind the safety car. We'll have to wait and see how the safety car and the stewards decide on that, but it is the case they make the way on around here up towards turn number 8 and 9. We are having that pulse to the racing at the moment, but everyone doing the weaving from side to side, trying to get that tyre temperature, get that sidewall temperature into the car in order to be able to go racing as they stopped earlier on. But as they make the way on around here, of course, we have no red flags. We don't have any resets to the grid. It is the case we do continue to go racing, and as Bennyworth makes his way on around to that start-finish line, the safety car stays out one more lap. We will lose about another minute of racing, if not another minute and a half, but it will mean that all 13 drivers will be together come at the next lap when we return to racing form. As we look to the blimp camera here, all the drivers making their way down and around at this point. You can imagine, particularly for Chris Daines right now, he will be livid with how things played out on that opening lap there. I think he'll feel as though that knock into turn 1 was fair enough. That's hard but fair racing. But the knock at turn number 3, where he was forced off circuit, I think in his mind, he'll feel as though that was going beyond the boundary there. And, well, it is the case, those elbows coming on out. I'm not going to cut it either way. Feel free to give your opinion, of course, if you're tuning in right now and you want to give your thoughts on it. But it is the case, I think that one may be going to the stewards' room. But with Paul Scott making his way through turns 4, 5 and 6, I think the field will be released from the safety car. Indeed they are. The safety car's running away, and Ben Bennyworth will now take us to the restart. They make the way out the final corner. I believe Bennyworth has gone on the exit of turn 9, so we're racing once again with 14 minutes to go plus the final lap. As they come across that timeline, can Bennyworth hold on now for the rest of the duration as they make their way down to turn 1? All line astern here, no real moves being made this time around, but as they all roll into the opening corner here, it's everybody's opportunity. It's all fair and square. Paul's got his 10 seconds off the back and will try and find his way into it in due course. But as Bennyworth comes on down through the chicane, since the restart for the first time of asking, it is the case. He's under pressure immediately here from John Higgins Sr., but look how they're all bunching up behind as they make the way into turn number 7. Now the thing that Bennyworth could try and do here is essentially back everybody up into one another and get them all to squabble. As we see Higgins Sr. they're running a bit wide, and meanwhile Jamie Dorey is just trying to pick one off already as they make the way into the final corner here, and you can see he's trying to go around the outside of Rob McGregor. He's got that Honda turned on already in terms of the tyre temperatures. There's a bit of contact there from Rob McGregor as McGregor gives Jamie Dorey a not wide. Dorey's not too happy there, flashing his lights about that. The elbows are definitely coming out, and Rob McGregor here definitely going elbows out racing all the way through as they make the way down towards turn 1. Gavan Gardener gaining a place there as a result of that moment. Remember, he's gained 4 places since the start of this race as they make the way down through 2 and into 3. Meanwhile, in the rear of your picture there, we do have a driver going sideways, and that's Chris Daines, who's just gone sideways, and he's found his way past Mark Sykes. And as they make the way down through 4, 5 and 6, how did that happen? There was a run. In fact, he split the seas and went for the Moses manoeuvre at the turn 9 hairpin, and then drag raced his way past Mark Sykes into 1. Making the move on the inside there was John Burnham for P9, and then just simply putting the pedal to the metal all the way down towards turn 1. A lovely run there from Chris Daines, the car snapping loose then, but just about catching it in time. As we return to live pictures right now, it is the case we look to Ben Bennyworth, who's lost out here. Now, what's happened to Ben Bennyworth, we're not sure. As we return to those live pictures, we'll get a replay shortly, but he's lost the lead. This race is down to P3 and Higgins Sr. and with Rob McGregor there up into P1, P2, and it's a HSR 1-2 as they make the way onto lap number 8. But as they come down the hill through turn number 2 and into 3, we can see that Higgins Sr. now has the hard task of keeping the baying pack of wolves at bay as they make the way through the next sequence of corners. But as they do, Bennyworth gets it a bit wrong, coming through forward, just about hooks the car back up, but Gavan Gardener here in a bit of contact there with Higgins Jr. losing the rear of the car, coming through the chicane. They make the way into turn number 7. Higgins Jr. up the inside here. Gardner's going to try and hold it around the outside, but it's going to be a bit of a knock, and Gardner's made to go to the gravel with 2 wheels. They come out the corner, but Bennyworth, after losing the lead position, started to feel a bit unsettled, and Jamie Dorey once again now trying to get back up through the field here after being knocked wide at this corner only moments ago. As they come through turn number 9 here, we can see how it is the case already. Chris Danes and Mark Arrowsmith into this fight as they make their way to the start-finish line here to go on to another lap, but they come on through, and Arrowsmith right now side by side with Danes. Danes up the inside through the final corner as they make their way to the timeline. We can see Higgins Jr. on the inside here. Gavan Gardener into turn 1. He tries to force the issue, but Gardener does not back out and holds firm as they make their way into turn number 3. But look at Chris Danes up the inside of Dorey, and well, forcing the door wide open, and what a good attempt there from Chris Danes. Couldn't quite pull it off. Dorey had the momentum, but Danes right now definitely going racing here and feeling as though he's got to get his elbows out as well, as we see Bennyworth losing 2 more places, in fact 3 places here as everybody comes up through as he's gone wide at turn number 6. I think for Bennyworth at this point, I think the dream of winning overall in the Pro-Am class is up, and now he's decided to let the pros go rather than fight them too hard as well. As Higgins Jr. up the inside here, Gardener into turn number 9. Gardener trying to get it a stick, but Higgins Jr. getting the elbows out there, and HSR definitely at their home circuit, making sure everybody knows it's their territory, and the fact that that was quite an aggressive move there, and Gardener rejoins behind, but as they make their way down towards turn number 1 at this point, they're still all together, but it is now a HSR 1-2-3 here, and well, you can imagine that the tempers will be high, and indeed, oh goodness me, and that's Mark Sykes off, and he just about gets it stopped on the wall there at turn number 2. Well, he's seen that tyre barrier before, he doesn't want to see it twice, and as they make their way through here, Mark Arrowsmith, well, right now in P7, he's ahead of Gavan Gardener after Gardner. He knocked a bit wide at turn number 9 on the previous lap, and with half the race to go in terms of time duration, it is the case of Crystal Pebbles driver now hunting after Ben Bennyworth, who's only 2 seconds up the road, and Arrowsmith here definitely pulling in the driver in front of him and trying to put the pace in. Meanwhile, Chris Danes up the inside here, Jamie Dorey on the final corner, and well, Danes are getting his elbow out as much like drivers around him. Well, I think the gloves are off here from Danes, and we'd love to see it in terms of the fact that he is now really digging in here and going hunting after the top 3, and well, you can imagine it is going to be retribution on the cards. Meanwhile, Ben Bennyworth trying to hold on to P5 versus Jamie Dorey, sneaking his way out the inside there with Dorey going to the grass on the exit of turn number 9, and as they make the way through 3 and all the way down through 4, 5, 6 right now in a long line, these drivers are behind Gavan Gardener, caught up behind Mark Arrowsmith as we ride on board here with the Rhino Motorsport driver. Now making his way out to turn number 6, up into 7 here through the right hand they roll. Arrowsmith making a bit of a ham sandwich out of the apex there and starting to mount it very heavily and losing the rear of the car in the process. Now as they make the way through 8 and down towards 9, we can see in front there it's the case of Dorey trying to make the move on way is Bennyworth, and meanwhile Gardener trying to do the same here as he goes up the inside, opens the door up, and Matthew Addy tries to also come through with the Audi driver, but as they exit out to the corner, it is the case that Bennyworth still in P5. Meanwhile, Gardener's up to P7. Arrowsmith, however, has not lost out to Addy. If anything, now as they make the way down into turn number 1, it's the case that Addy looking vulnerable here to what is Lee Horn behind us. Meanwhile, Arrowsmith goes around the outside there, Gardener, but Gardener's back up the inside into turn number 3. I think Arrowsmith having to take to the runoff area there at turn number 2, carrying a bit too much momentum in, but Matthew Addy makes it count, sneaks his way out the inside into turn number 4 and up into P8 here. Matthew Addy once again looking fast, as meanwhile Jamie Dorey out the inside there with Ben Bennyworth for P5 into turn number 7, but behind Matthew Addy looks to move for P7 into turn 7, can't quite find it, has to back out. All the moves are kicking off right now, and indeed everybody, with it being the final race of the day, it is the case that everyone now really feeling racy here and knowing every move counts, in the fact they won't have any more time to race at the Knockhill Circuit after this one. And as they make the way on out to the final corner here, John Burnham, P11 trying to get into that top 10 as time wears on here. Less than 8 minutes to go now as they go on to lap number 13. As they come across that timeline, it is the case that Burnham here having to wait and be patient, but to be fair, he has been a very patient driver all season and making those moves when they matter most and when his opponents least expect them. And meanwhile, looking up the front of the field here, here's the case that HSR continuing to lead this race, with the fact that it's John Higgins Sr. up front, with then Rob McGregor and John Higgins Jr. behind. And I would not be surprised if we see a position swap here shortly, in the fact that Higgins Jr. has been closing quite rapidly versus his teammate over the last couple of laps. And as they make their way through turn number 9, I think they're trying to set up a swap. Now where they're going for it, we're not sure, but the thing is they can't dilly-dally about this, because it is the case that Chris Danes, whilst he's not on the pace of the top 3 right now, you'd have to imagine that he will be on that pace on the last couple of laps, if not faster, albeit we have lost about 5 minutes of the race and due to the safety car, which means tyre degradation will not be as big an effect or a factor now. It is still the case that Chris Daines will continue to evolve more and more into this race as we go on. In fact, that last lap, Chris Daines sits in the second fastest lap behind Jamie Dorey, the first driver to creep into the 51s. And, well, on that lap in particular, John Higgins Jr. has done that in the 51s a little bit earlier. Meanwhile, it is the case that Higgins Jr. up the inside there versus teammate Rob McGregor for P2. And as they make the way on out to turn number 3, the Scotsman right now all trying to press on here at the home circuit and deliver that big result, the HSR podium, as they roll the way through to the end of this lap. But as they do, Lee Horn here battling with Mark Arrowsmith for P9, and as they make the way side by side into turn number 9, Arrowsmith defends hard here, but look at Addy, a bit prone here to Arrowsmith up the inside. As they make the way out the corner, it is the case that Mark Arrowsmith there gets the move done, and Lee Horn comes through with him. And I think Matthew Addy being caught napping there. I was going a bit deep into turn number 9. I don't think he expected to suddenly find 2 more Honda Civics on his inside, but there they are. And as they make the way past him now, he's got double the job to do in return as we ride on board here with Matthew Addy making his way into turn number 3. Now, as he does, you can see Lee Horn there trying to take a snipe at the inside of Mark Arrowsmith into 3, and on the exit through 4, it's the case he's had to back out. And as they make the way out of the chicane, well, we're hearing that Chris Daines has got himself up into P3 as Lee Horn goes off circuit. Then Matthew Addy, as Lee Horn rejoins on the outside here, Addy up that inside, gets the move done, or does he there? He shows patience, in fact, backing off. It's the case now, John Burnham coming on through as they make the way down towards turn number 9 here, and as they make the way into the braking zone, I can tell you that Chris Daines has found his way into P3. We haven't seen that on camera, we'll see it shortly, but John Burnham right now going racing versus Matthew Addy for P10. He can't quite find it at this time, and in the drag race up towards turn number 1, that Honda Civic does look as though it's received a slight improvement on the straights here, but sitting in the lower gears compared to the Audi. As they make the way down the hill, it is the case that Burnham stays where he is. Meanwhile, in terms of that move for what was P3, we take a look back at exactly how Chris Daines got ahead very shortly. As we can see, he's just ahead of Rob McGregor rolling on through. But we are just trying to find the replay of that, and here it is. We see Rob McGregor going a bit wide. It was as they made their way then through turn number 7, and McGregor drifting there and having to catch the car. And we saw that early in race number 2 where both McGregor and Higgins Sr. both had a bit of a scare at turn 7. It's come back once again for Rob McGregor, and Daines just sailing on through. But as we return to those live pictures now, it is the case that Gavan Gardener trying to find his way past Ben Bennyworth to get into P6. With less than 5 minutes to go, we see a flash of lights there from Lee Horn behind on the back of Mark Arrowsmith to trying to get into his head, and then Mark Sykes here hunting after John Burnham, and Sykes has just not had a happy day at the Knockhill Circuit. I think he's been enjoying himself, but the circuit has not been kind to him, particularly this run through turns 1 and 2. It's always seemed to have seen the Veloster step out in the run down the hill into turn number 2. Not stepping out that time, but he is trying to get into the top 10 in the finish here as he makes his way through the chicane. But as he does, chasing after John Burnham, looking close here, thinking about the move into turn 7. He's going to put his nose on the inside here, but it's a closing door, and Burnham knows that, and he can outbrake his rival. Meanwhile, just ahead, you can see how Arrowsmith right now in the pack of 3 Hondas having to hold hard on the inside here into turn 9. They make the way under braking into the right-hand hairpin, and as they do, Lee Horn trying to go all the way round, but he's not going to find it there, and Matthew Addy staying right with him as they make the way out of the corner. But as they head on towards another lap, meanwhile Gavan Gardener side by side here with Ben Bennyworth into turn 1. Gardner on the inside, Bennyworth on the outside. He makes the move for P6. I think he's going to make it stick as Bennyworth. They're a bit unsettled off of the apex curb, but at the same time Bennyworth does not need to fight this too hard, given the fact that he's the Pro-Am leader right now, and in second place in the Pro-Am class in this race is P8 driver Mark Arrowsmith behind, and he will not want to lose time to Arrowsmith. But if he gets close enough, you can imagine that Arrowsmith would love to take a win in the Pro-Am class with open arms. Meanwhile, Lee Horn here up the inside into turn 7. He gets the run up the inside, and Matthew Addy tries to also find his way past the Pro-Am driver, does the Pro, but in return, Arrowsmith there makes it clear that he's not going to be that easy to pass as they make the way up towards turn number 9. And you can see Arrowsmith here having to juggle, looking for the return move on Lee Horn versus defending versus Addy, and he tries to do both there as they make the way into 9, but you have to really commit to one. You can't do both. As they make the way out of the corner, here's the case that Lee Horn has found his way up into P8. Meanwhile, in our lead battle here, here's the case overall lead, that is, in pro lead. John Higgins Sr. right now does have John Higgins Jr. behind him, his son, of course, and, well, I think it is the case here with Higgins Jr. closing quite rapidly. That last lap taking 6 attempts out of his father. I would not be surprised if there's a potential position swap on its way, and Chris Daines is on his way as well. We're here, there's not long to go, but Daines right now is pushing hard, and he is trying to match the leaders. He's not quite there on the pace compared to the leaders, but he's giving it everything right now to try and go for P2 or even the win here with 2 minutes left on the clock and 2 more more laps to go as they come across the timeline this time around. Meanwhile, we look back to Matthew Addy here in P10. He doesn't want to finish last of the top 10. He wants to get into P8 if possible, but to do so he's got to find his way past Mark Arrowsmith and Lee Horn. And Mark Arrowsmith in particular has proven to be a thorn in a good number of drive sides today. A good kind of form. We'd love to see this form of racing, but as he makes his way up towards turn 1 this time around, it does look as though Addy on the inside here. Arrowsmith will be able to break a little bit later, but Addy fully commits as contact between the two of them, and the rear of the car goes loose for Addy as they make their way down through 2. He has to back off, and Arrowsmith once again frustrates the pro driver here. And to be fair to the Crystal Autosport Pebbles driver, he is driving splendidly right now in terms of defending and really having to make Addy work for it. Meanwhile, Mark Sykes trying to get into this fight as our race leaders are about to go onto their final lap with a minute left to go. And as Mark Sykes rolls his way out of turn number 7 and into 8, he's trying to get into that top 10 fight as well. He's got to get past John Burnham first as they make the way on through and into the final corner. But as they head on through here, Burnham defending hard and parking on apex, and Sykes having to wait his turn. But as they make the way on through here, in this case Paul Scott behind as they head on to their final lap, and with Paul Scott not able to quite close up to the field despite the time available. But we look from the back of the field to the front of the field here, and it's the two Higgins family members here running P1, P2 as they make the way through turn number 7. There's not long to go here as they make the way out of turn number 8, and as they head to the line, which is going to be a very special day here today at Knockhill. It's the fact that Higgins Jr. has made it 2 out of 2 so far, but I think Higgins Sr. is going to be bringing them home for the final time today. For as he makes his way out to the final corner here, he heads to the line, and it's going to be John Higgins Sr. who will take the checker flag, or does he know there's one more lap? Is the case, just getting across that line with 1 second to spare. We're made to wait just that little bit longer. Meanwhile, Jamie Dorey here on the offensive versus Rob McGregor as they come on down the hill, and as they roll the way in towards turn number 3 right now, Jamie Dorey saving it all to the last moment to try and get this move done, but will he be able to? That is the big question as they make the way on through the chicane. Well, it is going to be the case that Rob McGregor's a bit sideways in this battle for P4, but it's not going to happen there into turn number 7. They're going to have to wait a little bit longer for their battle to conclude, and as they make the way down towards turn number 9, well, Dorey's going to try and commit round the outside here. Can Rob McGregor hold him there? As they make the way down and around, where it is the case we must cut away from them to our race leaders, because this time they are going to finish the race, and it will be Higgins Jr. on the line who in the end takes the win ahead of Higgins Sr. Chris Daines P3, Jamie Dorey P4, he got the move done versus Rob McGregor on the line. Gavan Gardener got ahead of what was Ben Bennyworth towards the end. He takes P6. Ben Bennyworth takes 7th place. That is the win in the prime class, making it 3 out of 3. Congratulations to him. Lee Horn P8, and then it will be Mark Arrowsmith who comes home 2nd place in the prime class. P9 frustrating Matthew Addy all the way to the finish. Mark Sykes in the end P11, getting ahead of John Burnham right at the end. Burnham P12 and Paul Scott P13. But as we look here to our overall winner and our 2nd place overall, it's the case they swapped at the finish there, and well, I think it's the case a little bit of a cheeky tap there from the father to the son, but I think Higgins Jr. being given the opportunity to make it 3 out of 3 in terms of his championship aspirations. But indeed, Higgins Sr. putting a stellar performance there, and a stellar performance all evening, there's no doubt about that. Chris Daines in him, that P3, a superb drive from him, and nothing can be taken from Chris Daines as he's made his way into the pit lane. And Ben Bennyworth, what a performance from him. And as we said earlier, can anybody stop him? What, Knockhill? Nobody has been able to stop Bennyworth. That Prime Championship is swinging his way, and particularly for the last 3 rounds, since round number 4, it has been going more and more in the way of the Prime stacking with solo racing driver. And right now, if he carries on this way, it is looking very good going forward. As he makes his way into the pit lane here, it is the case that we take a look back at some of those moves that were made on the final lap, including what was, as we're to understand it, the move for what was P6 versus between Gavan Gardener and what was there, Ben Bennyworth. And in fact, this was into turn number 1 on the final lap as they made the way on down. Gardener up the inside of Bennyworth, and as he made his way on through, getting the move done into the corner. And then we take a look back at Mark Sykes versus John Burnham, and Will Burnham here having a poor run out of the chicane, and Sykes capitalising on the final lap up the inside into turn number 7, and the 666 driver here making it count as he rolled his way out of the corner. Meanwhile, just ahead of them, Matthew Addy battling with Mark Arrowsmith here, and this was the final corner, and well, you can see how Arrowsmith on that inside there, a little bit of connectivity loss. It was the case, still able to frustrate Addy all the way to the finish. And then the last battle to talk about was the battle, I believe it was between Jamie Dorey and Rob McGregor, where it was the case that Dorey getting the move done in the end. And in fact, if we can find the replay of that, here we go. And this was between the two of them. Of course, we had to leave them right as they made their way into corner apex at turn 9, but this is the continued story, and it is the case Dorey in the end making its way around the outside of McGregor. McGregor throwing everything at it, but not able to out-drag the Honda to the line, with the fact Dorey taking that outside run for P4, but great racing all the way through. I have to agree with you there, Katie. It's fantastic racing, but that is all of our racing for today, ladies and gentlemen. And with that in mind, it's now time for us to get ready for our post-round interviews of our drivers, but not before we go through the results, of course, of race number 3. And the results are as follows. In the end, John Higgins Jr. making it 3 out of 3 in the races of round 6 of the Next Gen Racing Touring Car Championship here today at Knockhill Racing Circuit. Winning in the end, joined by his father on the podium. P1, P2 for the pair of them, winning by 4 tenths ahead of Higgins Sr. Great set of results for Higgins Sr. as well. Chris Dainton fighting back to P3, making his way onto the podium, although perhaps a little bit upset or frustrated, well, not upset, I should say, frustrated by the battling early on, and particularly being forced wide at turn number 3. It's understandable, of course. Jamie Dorey P4, Rob McGregor P5, and then Gavan Gardener P6 in the end. Not quite able to match the pace of his teammate or get onto that podium today. And then Ben Bennyworth P7 then making it 3 prime wins out of 3 here today at Knockhill. Lee Horn P8, Mark Harrismith P9, Matthew Addy P10. And then outside the top 10, best of the rest, Mark Sykes ahead of John Burnham and Paul Scott, with Ben Bennyworth, Mark Arrowsmith and Mark Sykes making up your pro and podium. Mark Sykes doing well to finish on a high here in race number 3. But the results in, it is now time for us to cut away to a brief break, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be back in about 3 to 4 minutes, those post-round interviews. Don't go anywhere, you won't want to miss them. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, we're now due to kick off our post-round interviews with our interviewees. And we have got 3 drivers available currently. We may have a 4th driver available later on in the interview section of our programme. But it is the case, we have got the trio of the HSR drivers, of course, racing their home circuit. Very proud with their results today. And we're going to be started off with none other than John Higgins Jr., our pro driver, making it 3 wins out of 3 overall and in the pro class. And as he joins me in the interview room, John, it's been a tough first half of the season. You've battled up and down over the course of 5 rounds, but after a mid-season break, you've come full fire into this round at your home circuit and picked up 3 wins on the bounce. How does it feel to be a triple winner at your home circuit in Knockhill?
I think that has got to be some of the best racing I've ever done. The car felt on it. I was just hitting my marks and it was just all falling into place.
Well, indeed, it looked as though it was fully composed out there lap after lap and just started us off in qualifying. Qualifying looked good. It was quite a close qualifying session. And in the end, it was the case that not quite able, unless I'm very much mistaken, to take pole. But in the end, Chris Dane's taking that pole position. But you're not too far behind your father in P3.
Yeah, that's it. I was struggling in qualifying to get the car turned in with the low track temp, and the car was bogging really bad off the line. So I think I dropped like 4 positions off the start line. But luckily, 2 cars in front of me had a collision, and there was a safety car. But then Chris pulled away for about 2 seconds, I think. But then towards the end of the race, the Audi was dropping off, and the Elantra was still going. And luckily, on the last lap, I got a run out the chicane and did him on the outside of Clark's and got the run down to the hairpin and went really defensive into the hairpin and brought it home over the line. So.
Oh, it was absolutely brilliant in terms of the move you made, and one of the moves of the season in terms of going around the outside there, batting all the way to the end, and in carrying that forward into race number 2. It was a case starting on pole, not quite getting the launch off the line that you may have liked, but very quickly making your way back up into the lead, albeit with your dad suddenly coming from nowhere to jump into the lead of the race.
Yeah, that was weird. I think he must have some internet connections going into the hairpin, because me and Jamie ran deep and so did Chris. And I thought I was in the lead on the exit, but next minute I knew Dad appeared in front of me. So it's just a case of getting our heads down. He let me pass because I was a bit quicker, and I pulled away. But towards the end of the race, the Honda was still on it. So Jamie was catching me little by little every lap, but luckily I managed to hold on to it.
Oh, indeed. And just on that, of course, when you're up front leading like that at a circuit such as Knockhill, of course, we've seen how high the curbs are, how this circuit takes no prisoners in terms of you step out of line even through one corner and the car will just go. What does it take to be able to maintain that consistency for 20 minutes at Knockhill in the Elantra?
It's mega concentration. Like one lap you can go through the chicane and the car's fine, but the next lap, if you take it like an inch wrong, the car bounces off the curb and you get chucked into the gravel. So it is mega concentration, but if you concentrate and just hit your marks, it's good.
Well, speaking of good, when it was the case we had the draw for the reverse grid for the purposes of race number 3, your thoughts on when we announced it was P6 that would be reverse grid pole?
I mean, Rob come back from the toilet and I was shouting, Rob, you're on pole, you're on pole. But yeah, the car isn't the greatest off the line, which I think he dropped 2 positions, but we were top 3 at one point, but Rob just didn't have the pace, so he let me past. Me and Dad, I was just pushing Dad along, and I think Dad must have let off the throttle at the last corner to let me get the triple, but Dad had mega pace all night, and so did Rob, so it was good. Really good night for the team.
Oh, indeed, a superb night for the team. Not quite able to make it a HSR 1-2-3 in the final race, but still, yourself and your father on that podium, making it a double podium. In fact, 2 double podiums today, unless I'm very much mistaken, and some fantastic points in the bag. And I have to ask, with Snetterton being our next round in a week's time, do you feel all fired up now for Snetterton? Do you feel as though the momentum's back on your side?
Unfortunately, I won't be able to make Snet because I'm on holiday, but Dad and I think Rob will be there, so hopefully they can carry the momentum on and get another win or a few podiums.
Oh, that's unfortunate. We're not going to be seeing you out of the circuit at Snetterton. We would love to have seen you there, but still, we do hope you have a nice holiday. And just before we do let you go, John, is there anybody you'd like to say thank you to or give a shout out to live on the broadcast?
Just HSR team, Rob, Aiden, and especially Dad for just the good racing. Just following each other around, pushing each other along. I mean, 1-2 on the podium, that's like the best thing that could happen. So, and also to Mr. Fish from TSRC, he's been watching tonight, so shout out to him.
Well, I'm sure it'll be the case that Mr. Fish appreciates that shout out. And if we do see a message in the chat, we'll let you know. And also, Team HSR and your father, I think will appreciate those kind words. But with that, John, thank you for joining us in the interview room. And congratulations on returning from the mid-season break, firing it up at home, and bringing home the triple win. Well deserved. And I hope you have a lovely holiday to celebrate.
Cheers, Paul. Appreciate it.
All the best.
Bye-bye.
So here and there from our triple winner today, John Higgins Jr. And one thing that's very noticeable there, we haven't had Higgins Jr. in the interview room for a long time in the Next Gen Racing Series, but it is the case. You could hear it in his voice there. I think just absolutely happy with the way things played out. A little bit surprised there at the end with regards to his father potentially lifting off the throttle to the finish line there to enable him to pick up the triple. But to be fair, it's a team effort, and it is the case that in the championship, whilst Higgins Jr. and Higgins Sr. were joint on points going into this round, the theme has been that Higgins Sr. has been the stronger defensive driver and therefore having the ability to hold the places, but it's Higgins Jr. who's had the greater pace overall in one lap in the race. And we see Andrew Pike there in the YouTube chat saying Junior is a hacker. Well, indeed, he has absolutely hacked it today in the Elantra to be able to deliver that speed. And will we go from one member of the Higgins family to the other, now to the more senior member of the Higgins family, John Higgins Sr. Let's bring him on in and hear his thoughts on what has been an absolutely superb day at the home circuit for the family members. Well, as we're about to bring him in very shortly here, it is the case. We're just waiting on him to confirm he's available. And I think we will be able to bring him in now. And as he joins us in the interview room here, John, it's been a fantastic day for your son, but as well as your son, it's been a superb day for yourself and Team HSR at the home circuit, no less. How do you feel tonight, given the fact a P3 in race 1, a P4 in race 2, and a second place in race 3 to wrap up the evening?
I'm not sure it gets any better than that, Paul, does it? You know, my boys just won all 3 races, and all right, there's people will make the comments in the final race about me backing off and letting him win, but he's my son. And yeah, listen, it's one of them. You know, would it have been lovely to win that race? Of course it would. You know, that'd have been my first proper win on iRacing. But he's drove the wheels off it. I think he's been head and shoulders above everybody tonight. You only have to look at the lap times. He's like constantly 3/10 quicker. He's had the fastest lap in every single race. And if it had been anybody else leading that race, then he'd have passed them. So, you know, he sort of didn't quite understand what I was doing coming out the last corner in the final race because he nearly spun me round. But look, super proud of all the team tonight. I think we've had a solid night. After all the changes that they've done in iRacing with the brakes, you know, it's taken a little bit of getting your head round where everybody's been running loads of rear brakes. It's now completely different. So to get his head around that pretty quickly and to see Junior just take to that like a duck to water, yeah, he was in a class of his own, and why not? I think he's the only second triple winner this season, and hats off to him. He makes me immensely proud, and yeah, it's great. What a night.
Oh, indeed. And just addressing your point there about any one of the naysayers who may say about you lifting off at the end there, we've got Andrew Pike in the YouTube chat saying that John Higgins Sr. is a legend for lifting off right at the end there. And many who are touring car fans would be wise to remember recently in the return to Thruxton this year, we did see Dan Camish giving way to Ashley Sutton, the 2 teammates from Team Napa Racing, to enable Sutton to take the win in race number 2 to put them on joint points in the championship. But it's all fair at the end of the day, and teamwork does make the dream work. But coming back to yourself, John, of course, the story today in qualifying session looking a bit difficult, and then suddenly Peter on the grid out of nowhere, it seemed, right at the end. Was the lap fully hooked up there, or was there still a bit more in the car? You looked fast.
The car was fast all night. It just in the first race, you know, I had some real connection issues and had to restart. whilst qualifying was going on, so we restart the whole thing, and then just managed to drop in a 52 dead to put me second on the grid. And we thought we'd got the brake bias nailed off, but in the race it was completely different. And I'm not sure if you saw it, but going into Clark Corner on the first 3 laps, we were completely sideways, and that cost you speed. And yeah, listen, I really struggled with that tonight. The results may not show that, but yeah, I was clinging onto that thing for dear life tonight. Even having to hook first gear in that final race to get round McIntyre Bend. And we obviously sit in the HSR Discord chat whilst the racing is going on, and Rob's doing a similar thing, but Junior isn't having to do that, and it's but it was proper racing. A big shout out to Chris Daines. I know Chris was pretty upset with me after that second race. I thought that race was brilliant. We're banging doors. I'm defending the life out of it, and he got a little bit upset on the chat after the race. And Chris, I do apologise. You've completely misconstrued the door rub at the end of the race. He thought I've ran into him after the race because I wasn't happy about some things that went on. That is not the case, dude. If you watch the stream back, you'll see me door rub Junior after he's winning the first race. So I do apologise if you've taken that the wrong way. That is not me just to run into you. If you'd have carried on, then it'd have been a NASCAR style door rub. So, Chris, if you're listening just now or you watch it tomorrow, I do apologise, mate.
I'm sure Chris will appreciate it, John, and we do appreciate that you mean no malice by doing things. And we did catch on the broadcast what happened between yourself and Junior when you did turn him into the wall. A bit of a cheeky turn there after the race ended. But just with regards to race number 2, and particularly that brake bias trouble, we did see at one point it was almost as if you've heard of synchronised swimming, but it was synchronised drifting between yourself and teammate Rob McGregor through turn number 7, the right hander, both you going sideways. Just on that, in terms of having to adapt to it, because we didn't quite see that occur again for yourself in race number 3. What tweaks did you make to the setup on the car with the brake bias to try and calm it down a little bit?
You've just got to dial it forward. In practice, and that's the thing that sort of caught me out, was the track temperature in practice was only 1 degree Fahrenheit of a difference. And we were flying, you know what I mean? I was in a 52 dead, second quickest, I think, or third quickest in practice before we get into qualifying. So when you see the temperatures the same, then you lead the brake bias the same. And it just completely caught us out. It just, you're just breathing on the brake to go into Clark Corner. And the next thing is it's completely sideways. You're having to, drop down 2 gears, just absolutely plant the throttle to bring the front back round to carry on. And then you're just constantly dialing the brake bias forward till it feels comfortable, where when you brake, it doesn't feel twitchy. And it was tough tonight, really tough. So, hats off to everybody. I think there's some brilliant racing tonight, proper touring car stuff, as Knockhill always delivers. That will always be classed as my home track. I lived in Scotland for the best part of 20 years. So, Knockhill will always be very dear to my heart. And anybody that's watching tonight that's associated with it, then, love you guys to bits.
Oh, indeed. And just coming on to the final race then, a very interesting start to the race. We did see, of course, Rob McGregor on pole and Ben Bennyworth alongside him on that front row and getting the launch at the start. But particularly the end of lap number 1, we saw you come up the inside of everybody out of nowhere with some slight connectivity issues. Just tell us from your perspective what you saw happen, because it was very odd on the broadcast. You weren't there, and then suddenly you just appeared in the lead of the race.
It was just like everybody went wide, and then all of a sudden it was like, right, okay, I'll fire this up the inside and get the drive. And Junior mentioned afterwards, it was like you were blinking, and then all of a sudden you were like in front of us, and it was like, where's that come from? So yeah, there's obviously some connection issues going on just now because your voice chat is a bit crackly at the moment, so I'm struggling to catch up with some of the stuff that you're saying. But we need to look at the internet thing. It's supposed to be pretty decent, and I don't think it's running pretty decent tonight for some strange reason. But onwards to next week. So unfortunately, Junior misses next week, is away on holiday. I just wish him and the family a nice holiday, and yeah, hats off to him tonight, because I think he was just in different class, and that makes me ultra proud as his dad.
Oh, indeed. And just a comment there on coming across the line with him at the very end in race number 3, the two of you, P1, P2, son and father together.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether it was, Robin Jr. We're looking for the very best results, and part of me's got the championship head on. Not for myself. Junior stands a much better chance of winning this thing than I do, and that was the whole thing. Was just give him the win. It's a triple for him. Like I said earlier, he's only the second person to do it since Mikey did it at Donington at the start of the season. And hopefully he goes onwards and upwards. Okay, he's got to miss next week, so I think you're allowed 2 drop rounds this year, so he'll obviously treat next week as a drop round, which is a shame because we're at Snetterton. I think the Hyundai will be quick there with the 2 long straights, and the changes to the brakes and the tyre model and bits and pieces. So it's a shame he misses it next week, but it'll be a drop round for him, and then he'll come back, I think, relaxed after his holiday and be even stronger. So we'll watch with interest and wish him well.
Oh, indeed. And with regards to the Snetterton circuit, of course, we'll see yourself and Rob there next week. How are you feeling for the East England circuit?
I'm feeling pretty confident. I think the changes have suited the Hyundai, in testing and practice that we've done. Rob's not done a lot of practice, so hats off to him for getting the results. He's ultra busy at work and has struggled to get on to spend the time. So to step into it after the changes with the brake model change, that's been very difficult for him tonight, and I think he's picked that up. So what we found in practice was where the Hyundai's really struggled on hot tracks. We were on 106 degrees Fahrenheit, which normally the Hyundai be all over the place, and it was really strong. So whatever they've done in iRacing has just balanced I think it's called BOP in the game. It's just balanced things off slightly. So yeah, I think we'll hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll be really strong at Snetterton next week, because, like I say, the 2 long straights are going to lend well to the Hyundai Elantra. So.
Oh, indeed. Well, we look forward to seeing yourself and Rob take to the circuit in a week's time. But just before we do let you go, John, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast this evening?
Just all the guys that are involved in HSR, my 3 children, Amy, Jordan, and Junior. Enjoy your holiday next week, guys. Love you. And everybody that's involved in this to make it what it is. I think tonight was proper touring car racing, and I'm looking forward to watching the stream back shortly.
Oh, well, I'm sure everyone will appreciate that, John. We do love seeing you out on the circuit, and congratulations on your results today. A superb trio of results, and we look forward to seeing you in a week's time.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate it.
All the best.
Thanks, man. Bye-bye.
So hearing there from John Higgins Sr., our second interview this evening, the number 60 driver in the Pro Class HSR car, and it is a case with 2 podiums plus also a 4th place in race number 2. Higgins Sr. putting in a strong performance and delivering there when it mattered. Close battling with Chris Daines in race number 2, and we did love to see that racing between the pair of them, and it is the case. We'll very shortly be hearing from Rob McGregor for what will be our 3rd interviewee, and I've just had confirmation that our 4th interviewee will be Chris Daines, so we're just getting that set up as well, but we're going to have Rob McGregor in very shortly. But as we build up now, it is the case that we're just about to bring Rob McGregor into the room. Give us a brief moment, ladies and gentlemen, and he will be joining us. Alrighty then, ladies and gentlemen, as we're about to bring Rob McGregor into the interview room, he joins us now. Rob, a strong day for HSR across the board, and yourself included, 2 P5s and a P6. The car didn't quite look hooked up as much as you'd like it to be, but still a positive result at the team's home circuit?
Yeah. I'm happy with that. Happy with the 6th, 5th, and 2 5ths. No, I'm not going to complain because, yeah, it's my home track. I'm obviously the more Scottish one out of the whole team. So yeah, it's my home track, and obviously with having the pole and the reverse grid, I could have won it, but I didn't have the pace. I knew I didn't have the pace because I hadn't been able to practice prior to it. So yeah, I knew I was lacking certain pace from it. For example, that Junior and John had. Um, yeah, it's been a strong night for all of us. I think my favourite race was certainly race 2, where I had to kind of fight from the back. I kind of bumped into Gav Gardener and felt bad, so let him through, and doing so let through 6 other cars. So I think fighting from the back to kind of get sixth in that race was a highlight for me, really. As I say, I didn't have a lot of practice this week. In fact, I don't think I had any. So just to be able to jump on, and be somewhere pace wise, was quite positive. As John spoke about, the brake bias took a lot of getting used to. iRacing have done a lot of updates, so it took quite a lot of getting used to. But yeah, I had bits of pace. I had glimmers of pace, but then the glimmers would kind of fade away. So I'm not going to complain. Happy with what the team's done. So yeah, positive.
Well, indeed, it does sound as though it's been a positive evening, and it's been reflected on circuit for yourself in particular. And just
Yeah.
on the Elantra, when you last joined us in the interview room back at Circuit Zandvoort, you were talking about the fact the car just wasn't quite necessarily there in terms of wanting to work. But we heard from your teammate John Higgins Sr. only moments ago how the recent balance of performance adjustment seems to have moved the car into a better place, particularly in high temperatures. Would you echo that sentiment? The car's now starting to feel more comfortable?
Yeah, certainly the car's feeling a bit more comfortable. It's still going to be the same issues as we had. Um, I believe they brought a new tire model out, and they've done a lot of kind of aero fixes to all the cars to make it more kind of fair, more even, if you get what I mean. So yeah, I think it's brought us back in contention. All that I can say is issues. Getting used to the brake bias is different. Because where I was running, for example, in races prior to this, I was running as low as 37%. I can't get anywhere near that now. The lowest I think I can run is 48. So it's completely different. But on the Elantra, I still feel like its kind of main issue is starts. Every other car seems to get away perfectly fine, but we get away and then the revs drop. And it just it makes it difficult when you get passed off the line by the Audis and the Hondas who are very quick off the line. Because especially around Knockhill by turn 1, turn 2, if you're not filed in position, yeah, it's kind of game over. So yeah, I feel like the weakest point is probably still the starts for the Elantra, and I suspect my teammates will agree. Because it does bog down in comparison to every other car. So to be fair, we're not working with the best car, I would say. But Junior and John showed that they can make it work tonight. I'm quite happy with what I did tonight. I felt like I could have had more pace if I did practice. But yeah, the car's got enough in it. It just shows you the car's got plenty of juice in the tank to kind of get these positions. So yeah, positive night for us all.
Oh, indeed. And just coming on to your race number 3, of course, with race number 1 being a strong performance for a top 5 finish, race 2 being that recovery drive after dropping towards the back of the field, and then race 3 starting on pole, not quite having the pace to hold on, but still fighting all the way to the end. Just take us through what it was like battling at your home circuit and having to really try and hold off the horde of drivers behind.
Yeah, so obviously I've lived and breathed for most of my life with Knockhill. My dad raced there previously in Formula Fords. And I've done a lot of track days and I've I hope to race the track one day. So I know the track very well in real life. It's a bit different. You can't kind of take it into a sim, how it's going to react on the sim, because it's completely different. But race 3, I had that bogging issue at the start I was talking about. You know, the Elantras have that, so I instantly lost positions to Ben, and John nearly got by, but I believe he backed out, and Chris tried to go around the outside, and I was able to kind of block him a wee bit. Whether it was unfair, I don't know. I don't feel it was unfair because he was taking the outside line, so that's the risk you've got to pay if you're taking the outside line. So at the end of the day, race 3 maybe wasn't my best race. Obviously still finished pretty high. But obviously I would have loved a 1, 2, 3 for the team. So I'm pretty gutted at that, if I'm honest. But yeah, race 3 was still great fun. I had the battle with Jamie as well, so I had to get the arms out, had to get the elbows out, and certainly in race 3.
Oh, most definitely. We did see quite a few elbows out between yourself and Jamie all the way to the finish. But of course, we're far from the finish of the series. And next time out, we head to Snetterton, the 300 layout. How are you feeling for the East English circuit?
Yes, so I believe if I'm right in saying my teammates are leaving me to go on holiday, which is just unacceptable, if you ask me. But I'm looking forward to it. I don't really particularly like Snetterton, so I might be at a disadvantage. But hopefully I can get more practice than I had this week. But yeah, teammates are going on holiday, so I've got to win every race for them now. So because they've been pretty useless up until today. So.
Oh, indeed. Well, with that, Rob, we do look forward to seeing you take on the Snetterton circuit in a week's time. But just before we do, I'll let you go. Is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to or say thank you to live on air?
The main kind of shout out that I want to do is to Matthew Ardy. It's actually, I feel absolutely like, I don't know what the word is. That took him out in race 1. It was completely my fault, so that's on me. But I've spoke to Matt and he seems okay from what I know. But yeah, obviously, I'd like to shout out to the team. Both Johns did amazingly well tonight. Obviously, would like to shout out Aidan. Hopefully, he gets back onto sim racing soon. He's too busy driving his car in real life down back roads at high speeds. So hopefully, he comes back and drives in sim at high speed and shows us all up. But yeah, obviously, that's the main ones. And obviously, again, you guys for setting this up, Jamie, and the NXTGEN team for making this all happen. So, yep. And anyone else that's watching live on the stream as well, obviously.
Oh, we do appreciate that, Rob, and I echo your sentiment there regarding Aidan Wilson. Aidan, if you are watching this at any point, we do miss seeing you out of the circuit and we want you back. But with that, Rob, thank you for joining us in the interview room. Congratulations on your results tonight, and we look forward to seeing you again in a week's time.
Yeah, do you know what? If you can give me pole for the next reverse grid, I'll send you a $5. Right? Right, thank you, mate. Cheers.
No problem. Send it in a brown envelope. I'll give you the address later.
Yeah, PM me, mate. Thank you.
So here and there from Rob McGregor, and it hasn't quite worked out perfectly for him today compared to his teammates, but still happy with the results he was able to achieve, and I think feeling upwards in terms of the results and the fact that the Elantra does seem to be in a stronger place now, and I think at Snetterton we will see if Rob McGregor is able to do a little bit more practice, we'll be seeing him really fighting for those podiums and going all in. But speaking of a driver who always goes all in, it is Chris Daines, our fourth interviewee for this evening, and as we're about to bring him into the interview room, it is the case we'll get to hear from him on a night where he has received a few knocks and a few war wounds on the car, but still racing hard. And as he joins us in the interview room now, Chris, it's been a tough night, but 3 podiums on the bounce, a second place, a third place, and another third place. But you have been knocked about in the Audi a little bit. Positive night all the same? Something to move forward from?
Yeah, I mean, I can't complain at 3 podiums in 3 races. Yeah, it's been more downs than there was ups tonight, but overall, I can be pleased with the podium finishes.
Oh, indeed. And before all those podium finishes, of course, a qualifying session, and will we normally see one lap magic from yourself? And you delivered once again tonight with the only 51 in the qualifying session at 51.972. Was it the spot on lap, or was there still more out there? Because we know you're always looking for an extra 10th.
Well, to be honest, the Audi's been struggling a lot since the update, personally. It doesn't feel like you can push it as hard as what you could before. Obviously, brake bias has changed on all the cars, not just the Audi, so everyone's had to get used to that. But it's a very different car to drive now. It doesn't feel as strong as before. So to get a 51.9 in the Audi there, I think was all I could give it. Really, there wasn't much more in it. The Hyundais were just too fast because they're able to skip over that chicane. Both parts of that chicane, the left curb and the right curb, they're able to jump over the whole thing, whereas the Audi you can't do that. So you instantly lose 3 or 4 tenths through that one particular chicane there. So yeah, it was always going to be tricky to get pole, but I was surprised the Hyundais of HSR didn't pop a pole lap in there. So yeah, I was pleased with the pole lap. Got me an extra point in the championship.
Oh, indeed, and that extra point could go a long way. And speaking of going a long way, race 1, a superb start. And just before we come into the specifics of race 1, launching that car every time absolutely spot on and gaining multiple places at the start of race 2 and also trying to gain place at the start of race 3, you look absolutely comfortable in that car. It's almost as if everybody else is running in treacle.
Yeah, the Audi's really good off the start line still. It's one of the strongest off the start line, I think. Against the Civic and against all the other TCRs, it is the best starter, I think. Because I don't really know why. I think with the Audi, because it's got such a low rev range, you can switch into second and third gear almost instantly off the start line and still have a better start than the guys that are still in first gear. So it's got a good low power band in it. It's got good torque off the start lines. So yeah, it was trying to hold off Junior in the end. I mean, he'd done a cracking job in race 1 to close me down. Yeah, I had a 2-second gap, and I knew with that 2-second gap it wasn't enough, because the lap times I've seen those boys do in those cars have been phenomenal. So yeah, I kind of knew I was going to get some company for that one. But yeah, he deserved that win 100% on race 1, and he drove absolutely brilliant.
Oh, indeed, and a great battle between the two of you, particularly on that final lap, and it all came down to the last couple of corners. And just on that run, as we saw you making your way into turn 7, it just looked as though the car couldn't quite deliver the pace when it mattered most on that last lap.
Yeah, I was being a bit cautious because I knew he was on my outside, so I was desperately trying to leave him the space. The last thing I want to do is just floor it and send him into the gravel, like happened to me quite a few times, because I don't think that's right. So I left him the space, obviously, and by doing that, you leave yourself vulnerable to the Hyundai's straight line speed. So I kind of knew I'd messed up a little bit, but I thought, as a driver, I don't want to be pushing people off the circuit like that just because it's the last lap, because he'd done a great job catching me up, and I didn't think he deserved to be pushed off the track. So I left him the space and tried everything around the outside of the last turn to get it back, but there was no getting him back. So yeah, good win from Junior there.
Oh, indeed, but then as we come on to race number 2, of course, the rivalry continued, and off the line taking the lead of the race, but then having Junior come back at you quick, and Jamie Dorey getting into the mix as well.
Yeah, so in the first lap, I was made an amateur mistake. You can add this to your list, Paul. I had my virtual mirror on, which I don't like to have on too much because it's just a bit off-putting for me. I used the mirrors in the car, and I saw Jamie and one of the HSR cars going side by side, and I was so intrigued by what was happening behind me, I completely missed my brake point and went straight on the on the last corner there. So I sort of got jumped by everyone. So yeah, fighting back through was really tricky. Was really tough.
Oh, indeed. And on that fighting back for us, I'm taking notes of things not to do in my own sim racing experience. Just with the Audi, we saw your teammate Gavan Gardener really having difficulty after falling to the back of the field in race 1 due to the incident, but trying to fight his way through in race number 2. The Audi just seemed to be a car that worked well in clear air, but as soon as it was in company, it just didn't seem to have enough to find a way past. Was that your take on the car, or was it the case it's a bit different?
The Audi overheats. It's been overheating since race 1, and when you're stuck behind cars, it overheats and it doesn't deliver the power anymore. So you have to get fresh air. That's why, when I'm behind someone, I try to make the move as quick as possible, because as soon as it starts overheating, the lights will start flashing on the dashboard, and you're losing power. So that's half the problem with the Audi we've got at the moment, is it does overheat when you're sitting in dirty air for 3 or 4 laps consistently. And that's the problem Gavin was having as well. It just, once you're in that situation, the power band just drops and you can't get the pull out the corners, especially out the last turn. We just couldn't get any purchase, and it was tricky. It was really tricky. So yeah, it's a bit of a problem at the moment with the Audi, especially on the fixed setup, because I don't know what else to do, even if we had open setups to stop it, because it seems to be a bit of a sticking point with it.
Oh, indeed. And with regards to the heat, of course, it was a very hot-tempered race in race number 3. And particularly at the start there, we saw you being pushed wide at turn number 3. Your thoughts on that battle with, I think it was Rob McGregor at the time?
Yeah. Well, I've looked back at the replay quite a few times, and Rob got on the brakes about 50 meters later than everybody else, and I just got punted on the side of my car. That's as simple as that. And I got pushed off the track. So I've gone through the downhill section, left him space on the inside. I didn't want to at that particular point, because I just got smashed off and got damage. And left him space. He was on the inside, and then I just got pushed off again by 100% acceleration from Rob, which pushed me off the track. So it was really scruffy. I don't know if there was a inner team thing to say, just don't let Chris pass, whatever you do. I don't know, because there was a bit of heat in race 2 as well. So, and it just got a bit ugly from then on in. And obviously I was racing a bit mad at that point, which I hate doing. So yeah, I wasn't overly, I'll be honest, I wasn't really pleased with how turn 1 happened, because I was clearly ahead at the time, and there was a 50-meter distance between myself braking and Ben braking to Rob not braking and then hitting the side of me. So yeah, I was forced to pit, unfortunately.
Well, it was unfortunate, but still, we got to see the spectacle of you fighting your way through all the way back up to P3 in race number 3. And just a comment there on the fact that fighting through the order at Knockhill, like we said earlier, overtaking is a challenge, but just picking off the places one by one.
Yeah, obviously I wanted to get as up to HSR as quick as I could, because I just wanted to pass them at the end of the day. I was a little bit mad about the whole situation. So yeah, when they were all battling up front, it gave me a chance to catch the pack up, and then I was just trying to send it on everyone really as obviously clean as possible. I weren't being stupid about it. I didn't hit anyone or push anyone off, or I think I pushed Jamie a little bit wide on the last corner, but no way was it intentional, obviously. But he knows that, and we spoke, and he was fine. But yeah, and like I say, race 3, it's just when you're racing under that stress and anger, it's not a way I want to race, and I shouldn't have to race like that, especially after incidents which could clearly be avoided. And forcing me to pit for damage. So yeah, I just saw points going out the window, so I knew I had to try and get a top 3 and beat Jamie. And that's the thing I was trying to do tonight, is beat Jamie to close that gap, because after drop points, I'm only 30 points behind. So I've definitely caught up a little bit more now. So yeah, looking forward to the rest of the season. I'm glad Knockhill's out the way, because the Audi really doesn't like it around there.
Oh, indeed. And to be fair, Chris, despite it all, in the moments where you raced angry, we love to see you out of the circuit, much like everyone else, but seeing you fighting your way back up through the order. And also, you do have to stop doing those moments where that rear brake bias snaps under heavy brake, and it makes my heart skip a beat. Zandvoort first, Knockhill into the hairpin in race number 3. But still, that's the way you drive. But speaking of the way you drive, how do you feel about driving at Snetterton in a week's time?
I mean, I'm interested to see how the updates have affected the cars for a track like Snetterton, because obviously it's an extremely smooth circuit. I've been around Snetterton quite a few years in real life. I've raced around there in real life, and I know the circuit like the back of my hand. So I'm kind of hoping it's going to be one that I can I'm going to do well at. And yeah, if it's anything to go by, then I'm definitely going to go for the 3 wins and try and beat HSR all the way for that one because I want my points back.
Well, I'm liking the attitude there and the motivation as well. And, well, we can see it there in the YouTube chat. I believe that is John Higgins Jr. saying, thank you, Chris, for the kind words with regards to the battle in race number 1. And speaking of thank yous, Chris, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or thank you to on the broadcast tonight?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks to my teammate actually, Gavan, because he was having earfuls of me, angry earfuls of me all night. So I'm glad he didn't just ditch me on Discord and carry on racing without listening to me. So first of all, thank you to Gavan, and sorry to Gavan for the shouting down the microphone at him. He took the brunt of it, but he's a legend of a teammate. So yeah, and obviously all of my teammates and yourself, Paul, for putting on obviously a great broadcast and next gen for the league.
Oh, well, I'm sure Gavin will appreciate that. Indeed, the whole of Rana Motorsport, and we're very grateful for your kind words, Chris, as always. But with that, congratulations on your triple podium today, and we look forward to seeing you come back fighting fit at Snetterton in a week's time.
Thanks a lot, Paul. Take it easy, mate.
You too. So hearing there from our last interviewee, Chris Staines, and to be fair, there were a few moments there where the elbows did come on out, and well, in touring car, elbows do come out, but there is a line, and the stewards will take a look at exactly what happened and what not, but still, it shouldn't detract from the fact that Chris Staines, whilst driving angry at certain points, still put on some fantastic overtakes in races 2 and 3, and we really got to see brilliant battle in action, and even before races 2 and 3, we got to see that battle right at the end between Daines and Higgins Jr., where Higgins Jr. came out on top on that final lap. And it just goes to show you this championship means a lot to each and every driver, and it's going to go down to the wire at this rate. And Daines taking the one key positive from today, which was he's been able to take some points off of Jamie Dorey, the championship leader. And with drop rounds, of course, in effect, there's going to be 2 drop rounds in this series, and we'll talk more about that from round 8 onwards, most likely. It is the case that Dorey will need to be keeping an eye on those drop points because Daines, also Gardner, and many others in the field are coming for him. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that's all we've got time for today, and thank you very much for watching. And if you have enjoyed the broadcast today and you want to know more about the Next Gen Racing community in terms of the series we run, what we do and everything else in between, you've got multiple ways to find out more information. Firstly, if you want to go to our official website, that is at www.nextgenracing.co.uk, you'll be able to see our new website that we've recently released, in fact released a couple of weeks ago, and it is the case that we're presenting it as the home of clean and fair sim racing for all, with multiple leagues on iRacing, our sets of course the Competizione, and we'll continue to expand year on year out, and it's been a fantastic 2022 so far for Next Gen Racing, and indeed we would hope to share that story with you guys and girls tuning in as we continue to progress to the end of the year. But it is the case, if you're not looking to go to our official website and you want something a little bit more closer to home, perhaps you're a Facebook user, you can always go to our official Facebook group, that of course being at facebook.com/groups/Next Gen Racing. But with that, it is now time for our drivers to pack up their bags and make their way southward from Scotland down to the east of England for the Snetterton Circuit. We'll be going to the 300 layout, the classic full 300 layout for round number 7 in a week's time. Thursday, the 22nd of September 2022. Save the date. You won't want to miss it, because if there's one thing we can guarantee at Snetterton, it is there is plenty of close-knit racing all the way around the circuit, and indeed the circuit has a little bit for everyone. So all of our cars will be firing up, and at the top of that, they will all be very close together, lap in, lap out. But until then, we've been Next Gen Racing. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.